Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we've got a really cool stack of historical insights here. And we're going to dive into the rise and fall of ancient civilizations.
Oh, rise and fall.
It's a big topic.
It is a big topic.
But our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to extract, pull out the key factors that powered these societies to greatness. You know, like what made them tick.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, what ultimately kind of led to their decline.
The tipping point, right?
The tipping point.
That's it, yeah.
Think of it, for you listening, as this rapid journey through like millennia, thousands of years.
Yeah.
We're going to be spotting patterns, looking for echoes.
Echoes, yeah.
And hopefully uncovering some surprisingly relevant lessons for us today.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about this. It's like looking in the mirror almost, isn't it?
It is. Well, you've clearly got a curiosity about history.
Mm-hmm.
You sent us this really cool material.
I do. I love the big sweep of history. I find it fascinating.
It gives us this fantastic overview. It's great stuff.
It is.
Touching on some real cornerstones of civilization.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking Mesopotamia, we're talking ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley civilization, ancient Greece, of course, Roman Empire, and the Maya civilization.
Yes. That's a lot. That's a lot to cover.
It's a lot, but that's why we're here. That's what the deep dive is for.
That's what we do.
And seeing those echoes across those different cultures, it's really cool.
It's amazing, yeah. Just how these patterns repeat themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for you listening, consider this your shortcut.
Yeah.
We've sifted through the details, the historical accounts, whatever we got, to bring you the most compelling insights, those aha moments.
Right.
That illuminate those ancient stories without overwhelming you with a lot of detail.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's unpack this, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's start right at the beginning.
Okay.
Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization.
Yeah, the cradle of civilization. So situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq. When you think about it, it really does kind of live up to that name.
It does.
Cradle of civilization.
It does.
It's amazing how quickly things kind of develop there. So, around 10,000 BCE, we see the agricultural revolution really taking hold.
Okay.
And that incredibly fertile soil combined with, people starting to develop irrigation techniques leads to a pretty reliable food surplus.
Makes sense.
Right. And as you know, that food surplus, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
Right. For any society to actually grow, it allows, people to specialize, populations increase, and those settled communities begin to emerge.
Right. And from those agricultural roots, kind of springing up, we see the emergence of city-states around 3500 BCE.
Yeah.
Talking about places like Uruk, Babylon.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, these weren't just large villages. These were complex urban centers.
Yeah.
Really hubs for trade, religion, administration.
They were like early countries in a way, centered around that city and the surrounding lands.
Right. City-states.
City-states, exactly. And that's where, you start to see some truly, groundbreaking inventions come out of this period.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
So the wheel, that's huge.
Wheel, yeah.
Right? Revolutionizes transport, pottery making.
Yeah, everything.
The ripple effects are enormous.
Yeah.
And then you have cuneiform writing.
Yeah, cuneiform writing. This is like pressing wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets.
Exactly.
That transformed communication.
Oh, absolutely. Communication and record keeping. That's massive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, crucially, early legal codes, right? You've got Hammurabi's Code.
Right, Hammurabi's Code.
Which was really, it was an attempt to actually establish a framework.
Right, like a rule of law.
For justice, social order. These innovations, they really set the stage for, much of what followed.
Yeah.
They really did.
But as with all these stories, the rise was eventually followed by a fall.
Right.
What were the key factors that led to Mesopotamia's decline?
Okay. Well, there are a few things going on.
Yeah.
Geographically, the region was pretty vulnerable to invasions.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So you have all these different groups, Akkadians, Assyrians, Persians.
These are all different empires, right?
Yeah, exactly. Coming in, conquering the area, disrupting the existing powers, constant warfare, draining resources. It's just, it's tough being in that kind of position.
Yeah.
And then secondly, we see this theme pop up again and again, but environmental issues played a big role.
Okay, environmental issues.
Yeah. So while irrigation, initially it was great, it boosted their agriculture, but over time,
What happened?
well, it led to a buildup of salt in the soil.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, land that was once really fertile becomes unproductive,
Oh, no.
right? So obviously that has a major impact on their ability to feed their population.
Yeah, it's like you build this amazing agricultural system, but if you're not managing it sustainably, you're ultimately undermining the very thing that allowed your civilization to flourish.
That's it, exactly. And you do wonder if they saw these long-term effects, or
Yeah.
if they were just kind of focused on, the immediate benefits.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about their understanding of the environment,
Yeah, absolutely.
what they knew and what they didn't know.
Yeah. And then finally, internally, politically, it was very unstable.
Okay.
Lots of conflict, warfare between the city-states. It just prevented them from really unifying.
Oh, so they couldn't come together as one big power.
Right. There was no strong central authority, and that obviously left them much more vulnerable
Yeah.
to those external threats. So by 509 BCE, Mesopotamia gets absorbed into the Persian Empire,
Wow.
ending their independence.
So it's like a cautionary tale,
Yeah,
right out of the gate.
a lot of lessons there.
Now, let's head southwest to another river valley civilization,
Okay.
ancient Egypt, often called the gift of the Nile.
Yeah.
What made its rise so unique?
Well, I think it's pretty clear the Nile River was absolutely fundamental to the rise of ancient Egypt. It's predictable, flooding every year, deposited all this incredibly fertile silt,
Yeah.
right? Creating this rich farmland with, relatively little effort.
Wow.
So you have this reliable agricultural surplus.
So even more consistent than Mesopotamia.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially even more consistent.
Wow.
And it seems like that predictability actually fostered a sense of stability and order in their worldview.
Interesting. So it's almost like the rhythm of the river influenced their whole culture.
It seems so.
Interesting.
It's fascinating.
And that stability, it seems to have translated into a very centralized form of government really early on.
It did, yeah.
The unification around 3100 BCE under King Menes sounds like a real pivotal moment. So instead of lots of competing city-states like Mesopotamia, Egypt became one big unified entity.
It did, yeah. Quite early on.
Quite early on.
So King Menes unites Upper and Lower Egypt, creates this large, relatively unified political entity,
And powerful central ruler, the pharaoh.
The pharaoh, yeah.
And this early centralization, this allowed them to do some incredible things.
Oh, yeah. Mobilize huge amounts of resources, labor. Which brings us to, their monumental achievements.
Yeah.
Most famously, the pyramids.
The pyramids.
The construction of the Great Pyramids of Giza during the Old Kingdom.
Wow.
It's just staggering. The scale, the complexity.
Yeah, it's almost hard to wrap your head around,
I know.
The level of organization and engineering know-how to build those structures thousands of years ago. It's amazing. And beyond the sheer size of it, Egyptian society just had this very distinct cultural flavor to it.
Yeah.
The hieroglyphic writing.
Yeah. Beautiful writing system.
The sophisticated understanding of medicine.
Oh, yeah.
And that intense focus on the afterlife. It's all so characteristic.
Well, it's so interesting how their belief system, really centered on the afterlife, the divine pharaoh.
Yeah.
It provided this really strong unifying force.
Okay.
And it really shaped their art, their architecture, their daily lives.
It really did.
And don't forget the advancements in mathematics, astronomy.
Oh, yeah. That was important.
Crucial. They needed that to manage their agricultural calendar.
Yeah.
Based on the Nile's cycles and
Yeah.
the precise alignment of those monuments. It's incredible.
Wow. So they were really in tune with the stars and the seasons.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But even with the seemingly eternal Nile and their strong central authority, Egypt eventually faces decline.
Yeah.
What were the turning points?
Okay, so similar to Mesopotamia, a combination of internal and external pressures. They had periods of foreign rule. You've got the Hyksos, the Nubians, the Assyrians, the Persians.
All these different empires again.
Yeah.
It's like musical chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Coming in at different points in their history, disrupting their stability, draining resources.
Yeah.
And internally, the immense expenditure on, those monuments, those amazing monuments.
Yeah.
And the military campaigns, it created this huge economic strain.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The very things that projected their power also contributed to weakening them in the long run.
That's it, exactly. The things that showcase their power.
Yeah.
Really interesting point.
And then on top of that, even with a reliable Nile, they still had environmental challenges.
Okay.
Periods of drought, reduced flooding, that would have severely impacted agriculture.
Yeah.
And potentially led to social unrest.
Wow. So even the Nile wasn't always perfect.
Right. It shows that even those seemingly stable systems, they're still vulnerable.
To those internal, external shifts.
Yeah.
So by 30 BCE, with the rise of Rome, Egypt becomes a Roman province.
Wow.
Ending its long run as an independent pharaonic civilization.
And that's the end of that story.
Well, at least the end of that chapter.
Now let's shift our focus eastward again.
Okay.
To the Indus Valley civilization.
Yeah.
A culture that's, as you mentioned earlier, often described as lost or mysterious.
A bit of a mystery, yeah.
What do we actually know about its rise?
Well, the Indus Valley civilization, so this is around 2600 to 1900 BCE in modern-day Pakistan and India.
Okay.
Really remarkable for its urban planning. So you've got these cities like Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa. They were laid out on these sophisticated grid patterns.
Wow.
Advanced drainage systems.
Okay.
Standardized weights and measures.
Wow. That's a lot of forward thinking for the time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It suggests a very high degree of central organization and, some really sophisticated engineering expertise.
Yeah, that level of urban planning so early on, it's really striking.
It is, yeah.
It suggests a very different approach to city building than, what we saw with Mesopotamia.
Absolutely. And we also know they had extensive trade networks.
Okay.
Connecting them with Mesopotamia and Central Asia.
Oh, wow. So they weren't isolated.
Not at all. No, very vibrant economic life.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, unlike a lot of other early civilizations, we don't really see evidence of large-scale warfare or, big monuments to rulers.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is, yeah. So some speculate that it might have been a more peaceful
Wow.
and perhaps even collectively managed society.
Wow. So highly organized, seemingly peaceful,
Yeah.
and trade-focused.
Yeah.
What led to its eventual fragmentation?
Well, this is where the mystery really comes in.
This is the mystery part.
Yeah, the decline of the Indus Valley civilization. It's still being debated, among historians and archaeologists. But the prevailing theories kind of point to a combination of environmental and maybe some migratory factors.
Okay.
One theory is that there were shifts in this river system, the Gagger-Hakra river system.
Okay.
And some believe it was like this vital source of water for their agriculture.
It was their lifeline.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
And changes in its course could have led to, widespread disruption.
Yeah.
Another potential case of environmental change, impacting their survival.
Yeah. So it makes you think about how dependent these early civilizations were on stable natural resources.
Absolutely. And climate change, specifically changes in monsoon patterns leading to these prolonged droughts.
Right.
That's another significant possibility.
Yeah.
And again, drier conditions would have affected their ability to grow food.
Okay, yeah.
And then finally, there's this theory of the Aryan migration,
Okay.
which suggests that the arrival of these Indo-European peoples may have played a role in the civilization's fragmentation and the rise of these Vedic cultures.
Okay.
It's important to note, though, this is still debated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by 1300 BCE, those characteristic urban centers,
yeah.
largely abandoned.
So a truly enigmatic end to a fascinating civilization.
It really is.
Now, let's jump westward again to the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And the rise of ancient Greece.
Yeah, ancient Greece.
A civilization that has had such a profound and lasting impact.
Absolutely.
I mean, on Western thought, on everything.
Yeah, on everything, really.
What were the key ingredients in its ascent?
Okay. Well, ancient Greece, particularly, the period from, say, 800 to 146 BCE, when you had all these flourishing independent city-states.
Right.
It was a hotbed of innovation. I mean, in so many areas.
Yeah.
You have the development of philosophy, science by thinkers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
The big names.
The big names, yeah. I mean, they laid the foundation for, Western intellectual tradition. Their inquiries into logic, ethics, politics, the natural world, I mean, they're still influential today.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we still, look back to those guys.
I know, it's incredible.
Yeah, and politically, I mean, the Greeks pioneered something truly revolutionary.
Yeah.
Democracy.
Democracy.
At least in Athens,
Yeah.
around 508 BCE.
Yeah.
That idea of citizens having a direct say
Wow.
in their government.
Yeah.
I mean, radical departure
It was.
from, the monarchies that dominated everywhere else.
Yeah. So they weren't, one unified nation like Egypt. They
Yeah.
were more like, these independent city-states.
Right? Little countries.
Yeah, little countries centered around the city.
Yeah, city-states.
City-states, yeah. And while democracy wasn't, practiced everywhere, even within Greece,
Yeah.
the concept of it in Athens,
Yeah.
with the assemblies and the citizen participation, it was huge.
Yeah, a big deal.
And alongside these, breakthroughs in thought and politics,
Yeah.
the Greek city-states also showed, some serious military might.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially their victories against Persia
Right. The Persian Empire.
in the early 5th century BCE.
That's a larger empire.
Yeah, huge empire, like the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE.
Okay.
I mean, these victories, they not only secured their independence,
Yeah.
they fostered this sense of cultural pride and confidence.
Yeah, they must have been so significant in shaping their identity.
Absolutely.
And their, perception of themselves on the world stage.
Yeah,
But as we all know, the Greek city-states were often at odds with each other.
they were. They just couldn't get along, could they?
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah.
How did those internal conflicts contribute to their eventual decline?
Well, that's really crucial, right? I mean, that rivalry,
Yeah.
the constant warfare, between the city-states, like the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta
Oh, yeah?
from 431 to 404 BCE.
It really weakened them.
Okay.
These long, drawn-out conflicts drained their resources,
Yeah.
and it left them vulnerable
To outsider.
to outsiders, exactly. And eventually, the Macedonian kingdom to the north under Philip II,
Okay.
and later his son Alexander the Great,
Alexander the Great.
they were able to conquer the weakened city-states.
So internal division paved the way for external conquest.
It's a familiar story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
But despite their political fall, as you mentioned earlier, Greek culture continued to exert this massive influence.
It did. It really did. Especially on the Romans.
Yeah.
The Romans, they admired Greek philosophy, literature, art, architecture.
You adopted a lot of it, right?
Yeah, they really did. And that legacy, it continued to shape Western civilization for centuries.
Yeah, it's a powerful example of how, cultural influence can outlast political power.
It really is.
Okay.
Okay.
And that brings us to the big one.
The big one. The Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Its rise from a small settlement
Yeah.
to this vast empire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most well-documented stories in history.
It is.
What were the key factors in its remarkable expansion and success?
Well, Rome's rise, it was a long process,
Yeah.
multifaceted.
Right.
Starting as this, relatively small settlement around 753 BCE.
Yeah.
Their initial success was really reliant on their military.
They had a good military?
Yeah, a very disciplined, well-organized army,
They did.
It allowed them to gradually expand,
Yeah.
first throughout Italy
Yeah.
and then beyond. The defeat of Carthage in the Punic Wars,
Oh.
that was a major turning point.
Okay.
That established Roman dominance in the Western Mediterranean.
Okay.
And then that was followed by, further conquests in Greece, Egypt, Gaul.
And they just kept going
Yeah, they kept going.
and going. Yeah, creating this vast empire.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about military might, was it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Romans were also, master engineers
Oh, yeah.
and incredibly effective administrators of this huge territory.
Yeah, their engineering feats, the roads, the aqueduct, facilitated trade, communication.
Yeah.
The efficient administration of these vast territories.
Yeah.
And the monumental structures like the Colosseum,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
showcased their power, provided entertainment,
Yeah.
kept the populace happy.
Yeah. Bread and circuses.
Right. And then, you can't forget the development of Roman law.
Yeah.
That had a profound and lasting impact on legal systems.
Still to this day.
To this day, yeah.
Yeah. So powerful military, efficient infrastructure, sophisticated legal framework.
Yeah.
All contributed to this empire's strength and longevity.
Yeah.
But then, came the famous fall of the Roman Empire.
Right.
In 476 CE. What were the primary drivers of this collapse?
Okay. Well, the decline of the Western Roman Empire.
Right, Western Roman Empire.
It was a complex process spanning centuries, driven by a whole bunch of factors. Political corruption, instability became rampant.
Yeah.
Weak emperors, assassinations, undermined effective governance.
Yeah.
Economically, they suffered from inflation, heavy taxation, and a growing reliance on slave labor.
Interesting.
Right. So it stifled technological innovation.
Yeah, you're not incentivized to innovate if you have a bunch of free labor.
Exactly. And then you have the increasing pressure of the barbarian migrations, the invasions.
Right, like the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns.
Yeah, exactly. And, they sacked Rome.
Yeah, it was a tough time.
It was a tough time, stretched the military thin, exposed vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the empire was just too big.
It got too big for its britches.
Yeah, too big to manage, too costly to administer, to defend.
Yeah.
It was just too much.
Yeah, it sounds like a perfect storm of internal weaknesses and external pressures.
It really does.
It's interesting, though, to remember that while the Western Roman Empire fell in 476, the Eastern Roman Empire,
also known as the Byzantine Empire.
The Byzantine Empire continued for another 1,000 years.
Yeah, another 1,000 years.
What allowed it to persist?
Well, the Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, it had greater economic resources, more defensible position geographically, and a more resilient, administrative structure.
It was just better set up.
It was,
to survive.
Yeah, it weathered the storms that brought down the West. It finally fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453 CE.
Okay.
But it really highlights how different parts of even the same empire can have very different trajectories.
Yeah. Okay. Our final stop on this ancient world tour takes us to Mesoamerica.
Right.
And the fascinating Maya civilization.
Yeah, the Maya.
What were the hallmarks of their rise?
The Maya civilization flourished in Mesoamerica from, say, 2000 BCE to 900 CE.
Okay.
Really remarkable for its intellectual and artistic achievements.
Yeah.
They developed a really sophisticated understanding of astronomy, mathematics.
Okay.
They created a complex calendar system.
Yeah.
A unique hieroglyphic writing script.
Yeah, that calendar system and writing are really impressive for the time.
They are. They really are.
It speaks to a very advanced intellectual culture.
Absolutely.
In the Americas.
Yeah. And their architectural achievements, impressive pyramids, temples, palaces, like those at Chichen Itza.
Yeah.
It's a testament to their building techniques and their organization.
Yeah.
And they developed, sophisticated agricultural techniques, terracing, irrigation, to support their population.
Right, because it wasn't the easiest environment to farm in.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So what led to the widespread abandonment of their major cities around 900 CE?
Yeah, that's the big question.
That's the Maya collapse, right?
The Maya collapse, yeah.
What happened?
Another historical puzzle.
Yeah.
And like the Indus Valley, probably multiple reasons.
Okay.
But climate data suggests there were severe and prolonged droughts during this period.
Okay.
And, that would have had a devastating impact.
Yeah.
On their agriculture, water resources, and overpopulation.
Yeah.
Resource scarcity, may have led to increased warfare.
Between the different city-states.
Between the city-states, yeah. And the political fragmentation, that constant conflict.
Yeah.
It probably prevented them from effectively responding to those challenges.
Right.
So while Mayan communities persisted, after this period, that classical civilization, the large urban centers, largely collapsed.
But again, we see that interplay of environmental factors.
Yeah.
Internal conflict.
Yeah.
And potentially resource limitations.
Yeah.
All contributing to this major societal shift.
It's a pattern, isn't it?
It is. As we look back at all these civilizations, what are some of the recurring patterns that really jump out at you?
Okay, well, several key patterns emerge.
Yeah.
Firstly, environmental management is crucial.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Overuse of land, deforestation, climate shifts, whether they're natural or human influenced,
Yeah.
they appear as major contributing factors too.
Welcome to the deep dive.
It's great to be here.
I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah.
We're going way back today, exploring thousands of years of thought.
Ambitious.
It is. We're tackling the history of philosophy.
Yeah, right.
But when we say philosophy, don't think stuffy classrooms or, those massive books you can barely lift.
Right.
Think love of wisdom. It's this ongoing conversation, a debate that's shaped how humans see the world.
A conversation that never really ends.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, this deep dive, it isn't just some academic exercise.
Not at all.
It's about gaining a real edge in how you think, how you approach problems.
It sharpens your critical skills, gives you a broader perspective, it helps you wrestle with those big, complex questions life throws at you.
Exactly. So we're aiming for the highlight reel, the most crucial insights from philosophy's history.
And trust me, there are some truly mind-blowing ideas in there.
Yeah, I'm already intrigued. So to build this foundation, where do we even begin?
Well, the logical place is the ancient world. This is where philosophy, as a distinct discipline, really comes into being.
Okay, so before this, what were people doing?
Before this, explanations were mostly based on myths, religious stories. But here we see a shift.
A shift towards what?
Towards seeking rational explanations, figuring out why the universe exists, what's good and bad, how we know anything at all.
So reason over revelation. Fascinating.
It is, and this is where we meet the pre-Socratics.
Pre-Socratics.
Yeah, thinkers in the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, before Socrates.
Got it. And what were they obsessed with?
The nature of reality itself. What is everything made of? Is there some basic principle behind existence?
Fundamental questions.
Totally.
Yeah.
Take Thales, often considered the first philosopher. He thought water was the primary substance.
Water?
Yeah. Think about it. Water is essential for life. It exists in different forms. It made sense to him.
Makes sense. Basic element, you see it everywhere.
Right. But then we have Anaximander, who gets a bit more abstract.
Yeah.
He introduces the apeiron light.
Apeiron? That sounds complicated.
It is. Not a specific substance, but an undefined, limitless origin of everything.
Okay, so not something you can point to, more like a concept.
Exactly. It's like this primordial potential, the source of all things.
All right, we're getting deep already. Then there's Heraclitus, right? The guy with the river quote.
Well, Heraclitus, you cannot step into the same river twice. That's him.
So what's he getting at?
He's saying change is constant. It's the fundamental nature of reality. Everything's in flux.
Like the river's always flowing, it's never the exact same water.
Precisely. Even seemingly solid things are changing on some level every single moment.
Whoa, okay, that messes with my perception of things.
It should. But then you have Parmenides, who argues the opposite. He says being is unchanging.
Wait, so a complete contradiction.
Totally. Parmenides believed true reality is static, eternal. Change is an illusion, a trick of our senses.
Wow, so already we have this fundamental debate in philosophy. Change versus permanence.
Exactly. And these pre-Socratics, they're laying the groundwork for metaphysics, the study of existence itself.
Deep stuff. Now, let's move on to some names everyone knows. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. These are the big leagues, right?
Definitely. Classical Greek philosophy in its prime.
Socrates, he's the guy with all the questions, the Socratic method.
Absolutely. Socrates revolutionized philosophy by turning towards human concerns, especially ethics.
Ethics?
Questions of good and bad, just and unjust, the good life.
So, less about the cosmos, more about how we live.
Exactly. And his method was all about asking questions, exposing contradictions, guiding people to clearer thinking.
I like that, making people think for themselves.
Exactly. And what's interesting, Socrates didn't write anything down. We know him through his students, particularly Plato.
So Plato's like the keeper of the Socratic flame, and he develops this whole system, right?
Including the theory of forms?
Yeah, the theory of forms. This is a major concept. It says the physical world we see, it's just a shadow.
A shadow. Like an imperfect reflection of a higher realm where perfect eternal forms exist.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure. Think of triangles. You can draw a million different ones, but they're all trying to be that perfect triangle form.
So true knowledge is knowing these forms, not the flawed copies we see.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical way of thinking about knowledge.
It is. Then comes Aristotle, Plato's student, who seems a bit more grounded.
Yeah, Aristotle had massive respect for Plato, but he was more empirical.
And
Meaning he emphasized observation, logic, studying the world around us to gain knowledge.
More hands-on, less abstract.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And his work is vast, covering metaphysics, ethics, politics, logic, even science.
A true Renaissance man.
And hugely influential for centuries.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, after this golden age, we hit the Hellenistic period. What's the vibe now?
Well, after Alexander the Great, there's this focus on individual well-being, practical ethics, how to live a good life amidst chaos.
So less grand theories, more personal advice.
You could say that. And this is where Stoicism, Epicureanism, skepticism emerge, offering different paths.
Interesting. Stoicism, people often think it's about suppressing emotions, being tough all the time.
That's a simplification. It is about reason and virtue, accepting what you can't control.
But not becoming emotionless robots.
No, it's about understanding your emotions, responding rationally, finding inner peace.
Okay, so more about resilience than just gritting your teeth. And Epicureanism, isn't that all about indulging in pleasure?
There's a misconception there. For Epicurus, pleasure was about freedom from pain and anxiety, not excessive indulgence.
So a tranquil mind, not just a full belly.
Exactly. Simple living, good friendships, avoiding unnecessary stress. That's the path.
Makes sense. Then skepticism, that sounds like endless doubt.
Well, Pyrrhonian skepticism is more nuanced. It questions the possibility of certain knowledge.
Because our senses, even our reasoning, can be flawed.
Exactly. So they advocate suspending judgment, finding peace by letting go of the need for absolute certainty.
An interesting approach. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Now let's fast forward to the medieval period. This is where philosophy gets pretty cozy with religion, right?
Yeah, the medieval period from the fall of Rome to the Renaissance is all about integrating philosophy with Christian theology.
So faith and reason trying to work together.
Exactly. But religious doctrine generally holds the upper hand. Thinkers are using philosophy to understand their faith.
Got it. And one of the big names here is Augustine, right?
Augustine of Hippo, a huge figure. He takes Plato's ideas and weaves them into Christian doctrine.
So Plato's forms become like a blueprint for the divine.
Sort of. Augustine was brilliant at finding those parallels. He also tackles free will, original sin, these big theological issues.
And Boethius, wasn't he crucial for preserving classical texts?
Absolutely. Boethius translates and writes commentaries on Plato and Aristotle. Without him, we might have lost them.
A true guardian of knowledge. Then we get scholasticism, which sounds very structured.
Scholasticism is very systematic. It's all about using logic, especially Aristotle's logic, to understand and defend Christian beliefs.
So rigorous arguments within a religious framework.
Precisely. Thomas Aquinas is the star here. His Summa Theologica is a landmark work integrating Aristotle with Christianity.
He's the one with the 5 ways to prove God's existence, right?
Yep, still debated today. Then there's Anselm with his ontological argument, and Peter Abelard, a master of logic and debate.
It's amazing how much intellectual energy was focused on these theological questions. But now we shift gears to the Renaissance.
Ah, the Renaissance. A time of rediscovering classical learning, but also this new emphasis on human potential.
A more human-centered worldview.
Exactly. This is where humanism takes root, focusing on human experience, achievements, drawing on classical sources.
It's like a rebirth of ancient ideals, but also something new.
Exactly. We see figures like Ficino and Pico reviving Neoplatonism, adding mystical elements to Plato's thought.
So expanding on those classical ideas.
Right. And then you have Machiavelli, a very different kind of thinker. He's all about realpolitik. Practical politics, often ruthless. His book, The Prince, argues that rulers should use any means necessary to stay in power.
The ends justify the means. Bit controversial, to say the least.
Definitely thought-provoking. Now we enter the early modern period. This feels like the birth of the modern world.
A scientific revolution, new ways of thinking about knowledge.
Exactly. We see the rise of rationalism and empiricism, two massive schools of thought.
Okay, let's break them down. Rationalism, that's all about reason.
Yes. René Descartes, the I think, therefore I am guy, is central here. He believes in innate ideas, knowledge present from birth.
So we're born with certain truths already in our minds.
That's the idea, and reason, deduction. That's how we access this knowledge. Spinoza and Leibniz build on this too.
Okay, so rationalism is about trusting the power of the mind. But then empiricism comes along and says, hold on.
Empiricism flips the script. John Locke says no innate ideas. We're born with a blank slate, a tabula rasa.
So all knowledge comes from experience, from our senses.
Exactly. We learn by observing the world. Berkeley takes this further, saying only minds and ideas exist.
Getting even more abstract.
And then Hume comes along with his hardcore skepticism, questioning even cause and effect.
Wow, really shaking the foundations there. And this brings us to the Enlightenment, right?
The Enlightenment, a period of immense optimism about reason and progress.
Using reason to improve society, solve problems.
Exactly. Kant is a key figure here. He tries to reconcile rationalism and empiricism in his critique of pure reason.
That's a famously dense book. How does he bridge that gap?
He says knowledge begins with experience, but our minds aren't passive. They actively structure what we perceive.
So we have these inborn categories like time and space that shape how we understand the world.
That's the gist. It's complex, but it means our minds play a crucial role in constructing reality.
Pretty mind-blowing. And then there's Rousseau, who's thinking about society and government.
Rousseau, in his Social Contract, explores the relationship between individuals and society. He argues for popular sovereignty.
Meaning the power rests with the people.
Exactly. The government's legitimacy comes from the consent of the governed.
Big implications for democracy and individual rights.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've sped through centuries of thought here. Now we hit the 19th and 20th centuries, a time of massive upheaval.
Revolutions, industrialization, new technologies.
And philosophy responds with a flurry of new movements, diverse perspectives.
So let's dive into some of them. First, German idealism, with Hegel at the forefront.
Hegel was a complex thinker. He develops this system where history and the dialectic drive the evolution of consciousness.
Dialect.
The clash of ideas, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. He sees this as leading towards the absolute spirit.
Okay, so a grand interconnected view of history and thought.
Definitely. Then we have existentialism, which feels much more personal, focused on individual experience.
Dealing with questions of meaning in a world that often seems meaningless.
Exactly. Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, emphasizes subjective experience, faith, personal choices.
And Nietzsche, he's the one who declared God is dead.
Yes, Nietzsche critiques traditional morality, religion. He calls for a revaluation of values, embracing the will to power.
A radical thinker, challenging the status quo.
For sure. And Sartre, building on this, emphasizes radical freedom. We create our own essence through our choices.
But with that freedom comes responsibility, a heavy burden.
Definitely a key theme in existentialism. Then we have pragmatism, a uniquely American contribution.
What sets it apart?
Pragmatism focuses on the practical consequences of ideas. Truth is what works, what has beneficial effects.
So less about abstract theories, more about what actually makes a difference.
Exactly. Peirce, Jaynes, Dewey, these are the big names here.
Okay, then we have analytic philosophy, taking a very rigorous approach.
Analytic philosophy emphasizes clarity, logic, linguistic analysis. Russell, Wittgenstein, Moore are key figures.
So breaking down philosophical problems with precision, focusing on language.
Exactly. Wittgenstein especially explores how language shapes our understanding, how it can trap us in confusions.
Fascinating. And lastly, continental philosophy. A broad umbrella term.
Yeah, continental philosophy encompasses various movements. Phenomenology, with Husserl, focuses on the structure of consciousness.
How we experience the world from a first-person perspective.
Right. Heidegger, in Being and Time, explores the fundamental question of being, and post-structuralists like Foucault.
Foucault, he's the one who analyzes power and knowledge, right?
Exactly. He shows how power structures shape what we consider true or acceptable.
Okay, so we've covered this massive sweep of philosophical history from ancient Greece to the 20th century.
And it doesn't end there. Contemporary philosophy is still grappling with these big questions, and new ones keep emerging.
So what's happening now? What are philosophers wrestling with today?
All sorts of things. Feminist philosophy, environmental ethics, philosophy of technology, the mind, consciousness.
So responding to the challenges of our time, the new realities we face.
Exactly. It's an ongoing conversation, constantly evolving.
And that's what's so exciting about this deep dive. It's not just about the past.
It's about understanding the roots of how we think, how we approach problems, how we see the world today.
And for our listeners, hopefully this journey has sparked some curiosity, maybe even some discomfort.
That's a good thing. Discomfort can lead to growth. Questioning assumptions, considering different viewpoints, that's what philosophy is all about.
And as technology advances, society changes. Who knows what new philosophical questions will arise?
Exactly. What will be the next big philosophical breakthroughs? What will future generations be debating?
It's an exciting thought. So much yet to be explored, so much to ponder. Thanks for taking us on this journey.
It's been my pleasure. Okay, so you know how we always talk about like the big ideas that shape the world, right? Well, I think it's time we do a deep dive into philosophy.
Makes sense. It's everywhere, right? It
Yes.
shapes cultures, governments, like how we decide what's right and wrong. Even it's been doing this for like thousands of years.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we've got a ton of material to work with. From all over, too.
You're right, it's a lot.
Our mission basically is to like break down the most popular philosophies around the world.
Right, to figure out what they're really about and where they've had the biggest impact.
Exactly. Think of it like a crash course.
Yeah, a curated guide to these big, important schools of thought.
Because let's be honest, sometimes philosophy can be like a maze, you know? It's easy to get lost.
Oh, yeah.
We've got Western philosophy, Eastern thought, Middle Eastern Indian, and even some African philosophies to cover.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is not just like the different answers people have come up with to the big questions, but how these ideas have actually shaped entire societies and cultures.
Right, so get ready for some surprising connections as we trace these philosophies across the globe.
Sounds good.
All right, let's kick things off with some of the heavy hitters in the West, shall we?
That's good.
First up, existentialism.
Okay.
Now, this one really puts the spotlight on individual freedom, like you are what you choose.
Right, your choices define you.
Yeah, but with that freedom comes this huge responsibility to create your own meaning because the universe isn't going to hand it to you.
Yeah, doesn't come with a manual or anything.
Nope. Think about guys like Sartre and Nietzsche Camus. They really wrestled with this stuff.
They did. And what's interesting is how existentialism really took root in specific places.
Like where?
Well, France, obviously.
Right.
With Sartre and Camus being French, it became a big part of their intellectual scene.
It's like ingrained in their culture almost.
Yeah. Then you've got Germany, which was heavily influenced by Nietzsche's ideas about the individual and this thing he called the will to power.
Powerful stuff.
It is. And while the U.S. didn't really have like a formal existentialist movement the same way,
Right.
those ideas about individual agency and searching for meaning, you see them everywhere in American literature, psychology, even like the whole self-help thing.
Interesting. It really makes you wonder why those ideas resonated so strongly in those specific places.
It does, doesn't it?
When you think about your own experiences or the culture around you, do you see that emphasis on like making your own meaning?
That's a good question. It makes you think about how philosophy and society like feed off each other. You know, like did these cultures that were already kind of individualistic make it easier for existentialism to take hold? Or did existentialism make them even more individualistic? It's like a chicken and egg thing.
It's probably a bit of both, right?
Probably.
Okay, let's move on to something a little different.
Sure.
Utilitarianism.
Right.
This one's pretty straightforward. The right thing to do is whatever brings the most happiness to the most people.
The greatest good for the greatest number.
Exactly. The big names here are Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill.
Okay. And what's really cool about utilitarianism is how it went from being this like theoretical idea to actually shaping real world policies and governments.
How so?
Well, think about the UK where it started. Utilitarian principles really influence how their legal and political systems developed. Then you've got Sweden with their focus on welfare and human rights, which seems pretty in line with trying to maximize well-being for everyone.
Yeah, I can see that.
Even in Australia, utilitarianism is a big part of debates about stuff like euthanasia and climate change, where you're always weighing the happiness and suffering of different groups.
Right. It makes you think, though, like how do you actually define and measure happiness?
That's a big question, isn't it?
And what about when the happiness of the majority might mean bad things for a minority?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. There's this constant tension between what's best for most people and what about the individual, you know?
It's a tough one. When you're making decisions, how do you deal with that tension personally?
I mean, that's the heart of the debate around utilitarianism, isn't it? How do you even measure happiness? Whose happiness matters more? These are like the really hard questions when you try to actually put this philosophy into practice.
No easy answers there.
Definitely not.
Okay, ready for another shift?
Always. What's next?
Let's talk about Stoicism.
Okay.
This one's all about rationality, self-control, and accepting the stuff you can't change.
Right.
Think about Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. These guys were all about inner strength and being resilient no matter what life throws at you.
Interesting. So what about its influence?
Well, that's what's so cool about Stoicism. It's stuck around for centuries and popped up in all sorts of places.
Yeah.
Started in ancient Greece, and people still study it there. But it's also made a comeback in the US, especially with the whole self-improvement movement.
Yeah, I can see that.
And get this, it's even gaining popularity in Brazil. Apparently, those principles of focus, discipline, and emotional control are super helpful for entrepreneurs and business leaders there.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. The big idea with Stoicism is that real freedom comes from controlling how you react to things, not trying to control the world itself.
That's deep.
It is right. It's like this ancient toolkit for dealing with life's ups and downs.
Yeah.
Think about it. In today's world, with everything changing so fast and so much uncertainty, does that Stoic idea of inner resilience and acceptance offer anything valuable?
Oh, totally. I think that's why it's still relevant after all this time. It gives you practical tools to deal with the stuff you can't control, which is like most of life.
Yeah, you're right. Makes a lot of sense.
It does.
All right, time to head east.
Awesome.
Let's dive into Confucianism.
Okay.
Now, the big idea here is social harmony.
Harmony.
Yeah. And you get there through respecting social hierarchies, cultivating virtue, and putting a big emphasis on education and being morally upright.
Okay, I'm following.
It all started with the teachings of Confucius back in ancient China.
And its impact on East Asian societies is huge, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's been like a cornerstone of their culture and political systems for ages. Values like filial piety, respecting authority, the importance of getting ahead through education, it's all deeply ingrained.
It's fascinating.
It is, right. China, South Korea, Japan, they've all been profoundly shaped by Confucianism.
Yeah, what's key here is that it's not just about how individuals should live.
Yeah.
It's like a blueprint for how society itself should be structured.
Right. It makes you think about the values that are important in our own societies.
Doesn't it?
How does that Confucian idea of social harmony compare to what we value? Are there similarities? Are we totally different?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It really highlights how philosophical ideas can become like woven into the fabric of a culture, you know?
Right. It's not just about what people think. It shapes how entire communities actually function.
Exactly.
Okay, let's explore another Eastern philosophy.
Okay, I'm ready.
This one's called Taoism.
Taoism.
It's all about living in harmony with the Tao, which is often translated as the way. Basically, it's the fundamental order of the universe, you know. Taoism emphasizes balance, naturalness, and spiritual well-being.
Interesting. So where do we see its influence?
Well, Taoism has this deep connection to its roots in China.
Right.
Even with all the modernization and rapid change, Taoist principles and practices are still a big part of their culture.
I see.
You find Taoist temples all over the place. There's a reverence for nature. It's pretty cool. Then you've got Taiwan, where Taoism is also strong. And in Hong Kong, it influences everyday life, everything from health practices to religious beliefs.
Wow.
Yeah. The core of Taoism is often seen as like finding peace and power by going with the flow of life, aligning yourself with the natural order of things.
Interesting.
It's a very different vibe from some of the other philosophies we've talked about, right?
Definitely.
It makes you think, how do you find balance and connection with nature in your own life? Is that something you actively seek out?
That's a good question. It makes you think about how we relate to the environment and to our own inner selves.
Right.
Taoism offers this perspective that values stillness, simplicity, and being connected to the whole cosmos.
It's pretty profound when you think about it.
It is.
Okay, one more stop in East Asia before we move on.
Hi.
Let's talk about Buddhism.
Buddhism. Okay.
This one's all about understanding suffering, seeking enlightenment, and following something called the Eightfold Path to achieve liberation.
The Eightfold Path to Liberation.
It all started with Siddhartha Gautama, you know, the Buddha.
Oh, yeah, of course.
What's fascinating about Buddhism is how it's spread all over the world and all the different traditions that have sprung up over the centuries.
It's true. Buddhism is everywhere.
It is. You've got Theravada Buddhism in Thailand, which is all about monastic life.
Right.
Sri Lanka has its own deep monastic traditions, and Buddhism is a big part of their national identity.
Yeah.
Then you have Japan, where Zen Buddhism has become this unique part of their culture, influencing everything from art to mindfulness practices.
Wow. So many variations.
There are. But a key takeaway from Buddhism is this focus on changing yourself from the inside out as the way to overcome suffering.
Interesting.
Now, these central ideas of Buddhism, like mindfulness and trying to reduce suffering, they've become really popular worldwide.
Yeah, they have.
Do those principles resonate with you at all? In your own life, are you drawn to those ideas of well-being and inner peace?
I mean, yeah, I think it speaks to something universal in us, The desire to understand and overcome suffering, the search for inner peace. These are things that people grapple with everywhere, no matter where they live.
I think you're right. It's probably a big part of why Buddhism has appealed to so many people across different cultures.
Probably.
All right, let's shift gears again and head to the Middle East.
Okay.
Up next, Islamic philosophy. This one's really interesting because it takes the ideas of ancient Greek philosophers and blends them with Islamic theology.
Interesting.
Yeah, they tackle questions of ethics, metaphysics, and the role of reason all within that Islamic framework.
Fascinating. So where was this happening?
Well, Iran has a super strong tradition of Islamic philosophical inquiry that's still going strong today.
Wow.
Then you have Egypt, which was a major center for Islamic scholarship back in the day. They produced some really influential thinkers like Avicenna and Al-Farabi.
Okay.
And even in Saudi Arabia, which is often associated with other aspects of Islam, philosophical thought has shaped their legal and theological understanding quite a bit.
It's amazing how these different intellectual traditions can build on each other,
Yeah, it shows how powerful that exchange of ideas can be.
Yeah.
When you think about Islamic philosophy, what stands out to you?
I think it's really cool how they took insights from different sources and wove them together.
Right.
It shows that wisdom and knowledge can come from anywhere, and being open to different perspectives can lead to a richer understanding.
It's a good reminder for all of us, I think.
Definitely.
Okay, staying in the Middle East for now, let's explore Sufism.
Sufism, all right.
This is often seen as the mystical side of Islam. Yeah, it's all about having a direct personal experience with the divine. It's often characterized by love and devotion.
So where did this flourish?
Well, Turkey is a major hub for Sufism, especially with the legacy of Rumi's teachings.
Rumi?
Yeah. Then you've got Pakistan, where Sufi poetry and music are deeply ingrained in their culture.
Okay.
And in Morocco, Sufi orders are still a big part of religious life and community building.
Interesting.
What I find really beautiful about Sufism is that emphasis on personal experience and using poetry to express spiritual longing.
It was very evocative.
Yeah, it reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge can also be a deeply personal and transformative spiritual journey.
For sure.
It makes you think about the different ways people connect with something bigger than themselves,
Yeah.
What aspects of that mystical approach resonate with you?
I think it highlights the fact that everyone has this longing for transcendence. And different cultures and individuals have found all sorts of ways to explore the spiritual realm.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, ready to continue our journey east?
Always. Where are we headed?
India. It's time to dive into the incredibly rich world of Indian philosophies.
We did it.
First up, we have Hinduism. And it's important to remember that Hinduism is like an umbrella term.
Right. It covers a wide range of schools of thought.
Exactly. You've got Vedanta, Samkhya Yoga, and more.
Yeah. But there are some key ideas that run through many of them, right?
Yeah, like dharma, which is your duty, karma, which is the law of cause and effect, and moksha, which is liberation from the cycle of rebirth.
Big concepts.
They are. And Hinduism has had a profound impact on India where it originated.
You can't really separate Hinduism from Indian culture, can you?
It's woven into the fabric of their society, their social structures, even their political landscape.
Yeah.
It's not just a religion, it's a way of life for a huge number of people.
It's true.
It's also the majority religion in Nepal and even in Indonesia, particularly in Bali. Hindu traditions are still very much alive.
Wow. It's really spread far and wide.
It has. And the concept of karma in particular offers a powerful framework for understanding personal responsibility.
Yeah. How do you see those ideas of duty and karma?
I think they resonate with me on some level, that idea that we have a responsibility to do the right thing and that our actions have consequences.
They definitely make you think about the choices you make, don't they?
For sure.
Yeah, it introduces this idea of causality that goes beyond just the immediate results of our actions,
Right. Like everything is interconnected.
Exactly. And our actions can have repercussions that ripple out over time.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
Okay, next from India, we have Jainism.
Jainism. Okay.
A core principle here is nonviolence, or ahimsa, and they take it very seriously, along with asceticism and strict self-discipline.
So what makes Jainism stand out?
Well, their dedication to nonviolence is remarkable.
In what way?
It extends to all forms of life, even microscopic organisms. It's incredibly comprehensive.
Wow.
India is still the main hub for Jainism, but we're seeing more and more Jain communities popping up in places like the US and a notable diaspora in the UK.
So it's spreading.
Yeah. It seems like those ethical principles are resonating with people even in very different cultures.
I guess that makes sense. The idea of nonviolence has a certain universal appeal, doesn't it?
It does, and Jainism really pushes us to consider the impact of our actions, even the ones that seem small or insignificant.
Right, because they might not be so insignificant after all.
Exactly.
Now, that principle of ahimsa, it goes way beyond just not causing physical harm.
Oh yeah. It influences ethical choices in every aspect of life.
How does that strike you?
I think it sets a really high bar. It makes you examine how your thoughts, words, and actions, even the subtle ones, can affect other beings.
It's a challenge for sure.
It is.
Okay.
All right, last but not least, in our exploration of Indian philosophies, we have Sikhism.
Sikhism.
The core principles here are equality for everyone, selfless service to humanity, and a deep devotion to God.
Okay. So what about its impact?
Well, what's really powerful about Sikhism is its emphasis on social justice and the idea that everyone is equal no matter what. Its historical and cultural heartland is the Punjab region of India, but there's a large Sikh diaspora worldwide with big communities in Canada and a strong presence in the UK.
So their message has really traveled.
It has, and it reflects this universal message of service and devotion. It's a philosophy that encourages you to get out there and make a difference in the world.
I could see that.
Those values of equality and selfless service feel so relevant today, don't they?
They really do.
What do you think about how those principles, as emphasized in Sikhism, could contribute to building a more just and compassionate world?
I think they point to the importance of actively working to help others and treating everyone with dignity and respect.
Right.
It's about breaking down those social barriers and creating a more inclusive society.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, for the final leg of our philosophical journey, let's head to Africa.
Sounds good.
First, we'll explore Ubuntu. This philosophy is all about the interconnectedness of humanity, the importance of community, and the inherent dignity of every individual.
Powerful idea.
They are, and Ubuntu has had a real impact on society.
Like where?
Well, most notably, in South Africa, after apartheid, Ubuntu played a crucial role in healing and reconciliation. Its principles are also reflected in the way Zimbabwe is governed and in their ethical frameworks. And in Kenya, there's a big emphasis on communal values and cooperation.
So it's not just an abstract idea. It's shaping how people live and interact.
Exactly. It offers a powerful alternative to those more individualistic worldviews we see in some other parts of the world.
It does.
That focus on community and interconnectedness. It's a stark contrast to some of the philosophies we've explored, right?
Yeah, it is.
How does that resonate with you? Does it challenge how you think about society and relationships?
I mean, it definitely makes you rethink things. It challenges the idea that we're all just isolated individuals.
Right.
It emphasizes that we depend on each other and we have a responsibility to look out for each other for the well-being of everyone.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, in our whirlwind tour of global philosophies, we have ethical humanism.
Okay. Tell me about it.
This tradition has deep roots in African thought, and it places a high value on reason, respect for others, and the well-being of the whole community.
So where's its influence been felt?
Well, in Nigeria, it's influenced ethical considerations and how they govern.
I see.
In Ghana, it's shaped intellectual and educational discussions. And in Ethiopia, it reflects those long-standing cultural values of solidarity.
Interesting.
It shows that Africa has this rich and diverse philosophical heritage that's often overlooked in traditional philosophy surveys.
It's true.
It's really cool to see how deeply ingrained cultural values and traditions can shape ethical frameworks, and even how governments operate in different African contexts.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about the connection between philosophy and how societies actually function?
I think it shows that philosophy isn't just some abstract thing. It's a living, breathing force that actively shapes how societies are organized and how people treat each other on a daily basis.
Wow. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So from the focus on individual freedom and existentialism to the community spirit of Ubuntu, we've covered some serious philosophical ground today.
We have.
Yeah.
The thing is, these aren't just historical ideas. They're still influencing how we see the world and how we live our lives.
Right. They're not just sitting in dusty books somewhere.
Nope. And while certain philosophies might have been more popular in certain regions, the world's becoming more and more interconnected.
It's true.
So there's more awareness and hopefully more appreciation for the different ways people have tried to understand themselves and the universe.
Absolutely. And while one philosophical tradition might be dominant in a particular part of the world, they're all constantly being reevaluated and adapted as we face new challenges and opportunities in the 21st century.
Exactly.
So this brings us to a final thought for all of you listening. Out of all these diverse philosophies we've explored today, which ones resonated with you the most?
Yeah. Which ones felt most relevant to the challenges and opportunities you see in the world right now?
And how might exploring these philosophical ideas further enrich your own understanding?
Maybe even influence your actions and choices going forward.
It's a vast and endlessly fascinating world of ideas out there waiting to be explored.
So get out there and dive in.
Yeah, and let us know what you discover.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time.
See you then. Okay, so look, we all get it, right? Life is like crazy busy. We want the good stuff, like the big ideas, the stuff that actually matters, Yeah. But who has time to wade through a ton of books?
Exactly. And that's really the beauty of what we're doing here, right? Taking these dense, complex topics and distilling them down to like their essence.
So today, we're diving into Stoicism.
Ah, yes. Stoicism.
Which is this ancient Greek philosophy.
Timeless, really.
But it's like surprisingly relevant.
Absolutely. For anyone looking to build a life of real strength and virtue.
And we've got a bunch of sources here, right? From its like early days all the way to its modern revival.
A fascinating journey, yeah.
So our mission, should we choose to accept it,
always
is to really pull out those key insights.
The core principles.
The stuff that can actually help us, navigate this crazy thing called life.
Love it.
Okay, so Stoicism. Let's go back to the beginning.
Back to the ancient world.
We're talking Athens, around 300 BCE.
The Agora, bustling with ideas.
And this guy, Zeno of Citium, he's like the OG Stoic.
The founder, indeed.
Now, this wasn't just some, like, ivory tower philosophy.
No, quite the opposite.
It was born out of, like, wrestling with real-life problems.
The challenges of existence.
And it was shaped by some big influences.
Oh, yeah, huge ones. Socrates, the Cynics.
So it really emphasized, like, clear thinking.
Rationality.
Focusing your energy where it matters.
Right, where you have control.
And living with, good character.
Virtue as a guiding principle.
But here's the thing about Stoicism, right? It didn't just, like, stay static. It evolved.
It did, in fascinating ways.
You've got these distinct phases, right?
Chapters in its story.
So first up, we have the early Stoa.
The pioneers.
Zeno, of course.
Front and center.
Then we have Cleanthes.
And Chrysippus.
These guys were, like, laying the foundation.
Yeah, the bedrock in terms of logic and ethics.
Then we move into the middle Stoa.
Expanding the horizons.
With folks like Panaetius.
And Posidonius.
And they started connecting Stoicism with other schools of thought.
Bringing in influences from Platonism, Aristotelianism.
Which is so cool, right? Like cross-pollination of ideas.
Exactly. It's how ideas grow and evolve.
And finally, we get to late Stoa.
The era that really resonates with a lot of people today.
This is where we find, like, the big names.
The heavy hitters, yeah.
Seneca.
Epictetus.
And even a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah. Imagine a world leader being a philosopher.
Quite remarkable.
And the focus during this period really shifted to practical wisdom.
Putting those Stoic principles into action in everyday life.
Which makes it so much more, like, accessible. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that Rome embraced Stoicism.
Right, huge.
It helped it spread like wildfire throughout the empire.
So we have these core principles that underpin all of Stoicism, right?
A guide in lengths.
And maybe the most well-known are the 4 cardinal virtues.
Cornerstones of a virtuous life.
Think of them like your inner compass.
I love that analogy. So first up, wisdom.
Oh, wisdom.
But not just like book smarts,
No, it's deeper than that.
It's about this ability to, like, see things clearly. To know what you can control and what you can't.
Discernment. Separating what's within our power from what isn't.
And then using that understanding to make good decisions.
Choices aligned with reason and truth.
Then we have courage.
Courage.
Not just like battlefield bravery, right?
Well, that's certainly part of it.
It's more about facing difficulty.
Adversity, fear, hardship.
But facing them with integrity.
Standing strong in your principles, even when it's hard.
And then there's justice.
Justice.
This one seems pretty straightforward, right?
It is, on the surface.
It's about being fair, treating others ethically, upholding moral principles in everything you do.
Recognizing our interconnectedness, our responsibilities to each other.
And finally, we have temperance.
Temperance.
Now, some people might think this is all about, like, denying yourself everything.
Oh, no, that's not it at all.
It's more about self-mastery,
Self-control.
moderation,
Finding balance in all things.
not letting your impulses run wild.
Having the reins, so to speak.
So those four virtues, they feel like a solid base.
A strong foundation, yeah.
But one of the things that really drew me to Stoicism is this idea of the dichotomy of control.
Oh, that's a powerful one.
It was Epictetus who really emphasized this, right?
He did. It's one of his cornerstone teachings.
And it's so liberating, I think. It's this realization that we have control over some things,
Our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes,
but not over other things.
external events, other people's opinions, the past,
And by focusing our energy on what we can control,
and accepting what we can't.
we can drastically reduce feelings of helplessness.
It's true. So much of our suffering comes from trying to control what's beyond our grasp.
Right. And it's it increases our sense of agency, we actually have power in this crazy world.
Empowering, isn't it?
Total game changer. And you know what? This idea kind of flows into another big Stoic concept, amor fati.
Amor fati, love of fate.
When I first heard about that, I was like, wait, what? Isn't that just passive resignation?
I can see why you'd think that, but
Yeah.
it's far from passive.
Yeah, it's actually the opposite. It's this active embrace of life as it unfolds,
Accepting the good and the bad, the pleasant and the unpleasant.
as essential parts of the whole experience.
It's not about giving up, but about recognizing that everything that happens in some way contributes to the richness of our journey.
It's instead of fighting against reality.
We become allies with it.
Exactly. And I think by adopting this perspective, we can find peace even in difficult times.
It's a profound shift in mindset.
It is. And speaking of shifting mindsets, let's talk about memento mori.
Memento mori, remember death.
Okay, I know, that sounds a little grim.
It can on the surface.
But the Stoics saw this as a powerful motivator.
A call to action?
Because by, contemplating our own mortality,
By remembering that our time here is finite.
we're reminded that life is precious and it's short.
It gives us a sense of urgency, of purpose.
So it's not about dwelling on death.
No, not at all.
It's about using that awareness to inspire us to live fully, to live virtuously, to prioritize what truly matters.
It cuts through the noise, the distraction.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely sharpens the focus. Okay, and then there's this thing, negative visualization.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I know. Why would you intentionally imagine bad things happening?
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Right. It feels like you're attracting negativity.
But that's not the Stoic intention.
So what's the point then?
Well, it's a mental exercise,
Why?
a way to prepare yourself.
For potential setbacks.
Exactly. By calmly, and I emphasize calmly, imagining those potential setbacks without fear, you're sort of mentally rehearsing so that if and when those challenges arise, they're less overwhelming.
Right.
You've already considered them.
It's like taking the sting out of it.
In a way, yes. It also has this unexpected benefit of making you appreciate what you have right now.
Okay, so we've talked about some key figures.
Yeah, we've name dropped a few.
But I think it's worth taking a little deeper dive into what each of these major Stoic philosophers, based on our sources, actually contributed.
I agree. Let's flesh them out a bit.
So let's start with Zeno, the OG, the originator.
Zeno, the founder.
What was his, big deal?
Well, at the heart of his teaching was this idea of living a life guided by virtue and reason.
Makes sense.
He believed that our ultimate good lies in aligning ourselves with the natural order of the universe
Understanding the laws of nature.
and living in harmony with them.
Okay. And then Cleanthes kind of took the torch, right?
He did.
Yeah.
Stepped into those very big sandals.
So what were his main contributions? What did he add to the mix?
He really developed Stoic theology
Okay.
and emphasized this concept of logos. It's the underlying intelligence, the rational principle governing the cosmos. And his hymn to Zeus, it's beautiful. It really captures this Stoic reverence for a rational, ordered universe.
Got it. And now Chrysippus, this guy seems like he was the architect.
Oh, he was a systematizer.
Yeah, he really built out the framework.
Absolutely. He's considered a pivotal early Stoic because he really systematized Stoic logic and ethics.
So he was tackling those big philosophical questions.
Oh yeah, the tough ones. Like, how can free will exist in a deterministic universe?
Deep stuff.
He was a major contributor to the intellectual framework of Stoicism.
Okay, so now we move on to Seneca.
Seneca the Younger.
The Roman statesman. I mean, his writings feel so, like, relevant to modern life.
They do. It's uncanny, isn't it?
Totally. So what makes him so, like, timeless?
Well, his writings, especially his letters to Lucilius,
Right.
they're like a goldmine of practical wisdom.
Practical wisdom, that's key.
He wrote extensively about ethics, about managing emotions, the importance of self-discipline, and it's also relatable.
It is, like, he gets it.
He does. He offers guidance on how to navigate the ups and downs, the inevitable challenges of life, and how to cultivate inner resilience.
Awesome. Okay, next up, Epictetus,
Epictetus,
a former slave.
which makes his teachings all the more remarkable.
It does. It's like he understands true freedom on, like, a visceral level.
He does, and he really emphasized that inner freedom,
Right.
that it resides within us.
Not in our external circumstances.
Exactly. Through his discourses and the Enchiridion, which is like this little handbook of Stoic wisdom,
Right.
he taught that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can always choose how we react.
And that's where our true power lies.
Our agency.
So powerful. Okay, and finally, Marcus Aurelius,
Marcus Aurelius.
the Roman emperor.
Imagine that responsibility, ruling an empire.
Wow. And his meditations, they're like this personal journal, right?
They are a window into his thoughts, his struggles, his insights.
And they show how these principles can guide even the most powerful individuals.
It's a reminder that no matter our station, we all face fundamental human challenges.
So true. And in his writings, he emphasizes resilience, humility, accepting what we can't change.
Timeless wisdom.
It is. Okay, so we've covered, like, a lot of ground here.
We have a whirlwind tour of Stoicism.
The origins, the core tenets, the key thinkers. But the big question is, how do we actually use this stuff?
Right. How do we translate these ideas into action?
Because it can't just be some abstract philosophy, right?
It's meant to be lived, embodied.
So let's get practical. How can we apply Stoicism to our lives today?
Well, let's start with managing emotions.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one.
Stoicism encourages us to examine our emotional responses, but rationally, not just getting swept away by them.
So, like, not letting your emotions control you.
Exactly, because often our anger, our sadness, they stem from our interpretations of events, not the events themselves.
It's our perception.
Exactly. So by developing self-awareness, we can learn to moderate those reactions, to not be ruled by negative feelings.
Like putting a filter between the stimulus and your response.
A pause button, a space for reason.
Love it. And what about building resilience?
That's where practices like negative visualization come in.
Yeah, we talked about
By
that.
mentally preparing for potential difficulties.
It's like mental weight training.
A great analogy. And by practicing self-control in our everyday choices, we're strengthening our capacity to face bigger challenges with composure.
So we're building those mental muscles.
Exactly.
What about decision making? We make choices all the time, big and small.
We do. And Stoicism really prioritizes wisdom and ethical reasoning in decision making.
Right.
So when you're faced with a choice, you ask yourself, what aligns with virtue? What is the just and right course of action?
So it's not about, like, what's easiest or most convenient.
No, it's about making principled choices based on a clear understanding of what truly matters.
What about relationships? They can be so tricky.
Oh, they can. But Stoicism offers guidance there too.
So how do we apply these ideas to, like, our interactions with others?
Yeah. Well, it starts with cultivating empathy, patience, fairness.
Because everyone's fighting their own battle.
Exactly. And recognizing that others, like ourselves, are imperfect.
Are going to mess up.
We're all going to make mistakes.
And that understanding can, like, reduce conflict, right?
It can create space for compassion. And ultimately, it's about treating everyone with respect, acting with justice.
And what about when things get really tough? Like when life throws those curveballs?
Well, that's where amor fati and the understanding of impermanence becomes so crucial.
Right.
By accepting that challenges are just part of life.
And that nothing lasts forever.
We can learn to adapt to difficulties without succumbing to unnecessary distress.
It's about finding that inner strength, even when things around you are falling apart.
That's resilience.
It's amazing how these ideas are like thousands of years old,
ancient wisdom.
but they still feel so relevant, so fresh.
Don't they?
And it feels like Stoicism is having, like, a major moment right now.
A resurgence, for sure.
It's popping up everywhere.
It's permeating culture.
So where are we seeing its influence today, like in the real world?
Well, let's start with leadership. Figures like Theodore Roosevelt,
Ah, yeah, Teddy.
a man of action
And Admiral James Stockdale.
who endured unimaginable hardship as a prisoner of war.
Right, during Vietnam.
Both of them drew upon Stoic principles
To guide their actions, to persevere.
to stay strong in the face of adversity.
Wow. What about business? That world is so, like, high pressure.
It is, and that's precisely why Stoicism is resonating so strongly in the business world.
Because it provides, like, a framework.
It does, for managing stress, making rational decisions, and upholding your integrity in challenging environments.
It's about focusing on what you can control.
Your actions, your responses.
And accepting setbacks as part of the journey.
A crucial lesson for any entrepreneur.
So true. And I've even noticed Stoic principles being discussed in the context of, like, sports and peak performance.
Oh, absolutely. Figures like Ryan Holiday have really popularized Stoic strategies for athletes and performers.
It's all about that mental game.
It is mental resilience, focus, perseverance.
Because the ability to regulate your emotions, to stay present, even in intense competition,
Those are core Stoic tenets.
and they can make all the difference.
The difference between winning and losing.
But Stoicism isn't just for, like, presidents and CEOs and elite athletes, right?
Not at all.
What about everyday well-being? Like, for regular folks?
Well, Stoic practices like journaling and mindfulness.
Right, those are super popular now.
They are, and for good reason. They encourage self-reflection and awareness of your thoughts and emotions.
And that can have a huge impact on your mental health.
A profound impact. It's about cultivating inner peace.
Even amidst the chaos of daily life.
Exactly.
So it seems like whether you're leading a team, chasing your dreams, or just trying to get through the day,
Stoicism has something to offer.
this emphasis on virtue,
On resilience.
on rational thought, it can really change how we experience the world.
And how we navigate it.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Stoicism, I think it's clear that this ancient philosophy,
Time-tested wisdom.
it provides us with this, like, framework for dealing with all the stuff life throws our way.
The challenges, the setbacks, the triumphs.
By focusing on those virtues,
Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance.
and by understanding that difference between what we can control and what we can't,
The dichotomy of control.
we can build lives of resilience and purpose.
Lives guided by reason, by virtue.
And as our sources have shown, these principles, they're incredibly practical.
They offer a path to a more fulfilling, more serene existence.
And I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so as you've been listening to us, geek out about Stoicism, I want to leave you with this.
A parting thought.
What's one area of your life where you think applying a Stoic perspective, even just a little bit,
Just a touch of that ancient wisdom.
could create a positive change?
A shift in your mindset.
Really think about that.
It might surprise you.
It might change everything.
Indeed.
That's it for our deep dive into Stoicism.
Until next time.
Keep those minds sharp and those spirits strong.
And remember, virtue is its own reward. Have you ever had that feeling like when you're about to make a big decision? Like a career change or something?
Yeah.
And it's not just the practical stuff, but there's this like deeper question underneath it all. Like, what's the right way to live? Or what even matters? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Or maybe it's not even that dramatic, just this nagging sense that
Yeah.
the life you're living isn't really truly yours. It's kind of like you're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
That's where existentialism comes in, right?
Exactly.
Not as some stuffy philosophy lecture, but dealing with these really human, raw experiences.
Yeah. And this article we're diving into today,
Right.
it really gets that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a history lesson. It's about existentialism as a living, breathing philosophy
I like that.
that people still connect with.
Yeah.
It walks us through the big thinkers, the core ideas, and how surprisingly relevant it is to our lives today.
I was surprised by that. So our mission today is to pull out those most powerful insights,
Yeah.
the kind that stick with you,
That's it.
and maybe even give you a new way to look at your own search for meaning,
Absolutely.
but without getting bogged down in all the jargon.
Exactly.
So let's start at the beginning,
Okay.
which is kind of tricky because existentialism wasn't like a sudden explosion, more like a slow burn.
Yeah.
The article points to this guy, Søren Kierkegaard, back in the 19th century, as a really important figure, sort of a founding father.
Right.
What struck me was his focus on the individual, your feelings, your choices, that leap of faith he talked about.
Yeah.
He wasn't about just accepting these purely rational explanations for everything.
Not at all.
It was more about personal conviction, right?
Absolutely.
Kierkegaard was really going against the grain.
Yeah.
Back then, everyone was all about objective reason and logic.
That's right.
But he was saying, hold on. The most important truths, the things that really matter,
Right.
they're not just intellectual concepts, they're deeply personal. And they involve this commitment that goes beyond just pure logic.
Exactly.
That leap of faith he talks about,
Yeah.
whether it's religious or not. It's about making a choice, believing in something,
Right.
even when you don't have all the proof.
Yeah.
It's about putting your whole self into it.
It is.
Then you have Nietzsche, who comes along and drops this bombshell. God is dead.
Yeah, a real attention grabber.
It sounds dramatic, but the article explains what he really meant.
Right.
He was basically saying those old ways of finding meaning and morality, they're gone.
They crumbled.
So it's up to each person to create their own values and embrace this idea of the will to power.
Yeah.
And then there's this Übermensch concept, is that like someone who doesn't just follow the rules,
Exactly.
but defines their own idea of what's good, what's excellent.
You got it.
It's fascinating how Nietzsche saw this collapse of traditional authority as like this pivotal moment.
It was the turning point.
If there's no universal truth anymore,
Yeah.
then individuals have this incredible opportunity and also this burden
Right.
to become self-creating, to decide what's right and wrong for themselves.
Absolutely.
And to strive for their highest potential. So the Übermensch isn't about being better than everyone else in the traditional sense.
No.
It's about pushing yourself beyond your limits
Yeah.
and saying yes to life, even without needing someone else's approval.
That's it.
It's about forging your own path.
Exactly.
So from Kierkegaard's focus on individual faith
Yeah.
to Nietzsche's individual creation of values.
Right.
And then the article brings in Heidegger and his idea of being,
Or dacing.
Dasein.
It's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah,
But basically, it's about our existence, our being in the world.
right. And he talks about living authentically versus inauthentically.
Yeah. There's a key distinction.
Inauthenticity sounds like getting caught up in the daily grind, just doing what's expected without really questioning anything.
That's a good way to put it.
Like sleepwalking through life.
Yeah. Kinda.
Right.
Exactly.
What's interesting about Heidegger is how he explores how easy it is to get sucked into the superficial stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just conforming to what society tells you to do.
Right.
Without really facing your own existence, your own being.
Without confronting those big questions.
Right, like why am I here and what does it all mean?
Exactly.
For Heidegger, authentic existence means facing your own mortality
Yeah.
and taking responsibility for your choices instead of running away from the tough stuff.
It's about being present, being aware.
Right. It's like the difference between drifting along in a boat
Yeah.
and actually grabbing the oars and steering,
Exactly.
taking control.
That's it.
And then we get to Sartre, who really brought existentialism to the masses.
He did.
The article mentions being and nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
And existentialism is a humanism.
Right. Two of his most famous works.
His big idea, this phrase, existence precedes essence. It's so central to existentialism.
This really is the foundation.
It's like, think of a knife.
Okay.
It's made for a specific purpose.
right. To cut things.
But humans, we're not born with a predetermined blueprint like that.
Exactly.
We become who we are through what we do.
Through our actions, our choices, it's not set in stone.
And that's a really powerful idea.
It is, because it means we have this incredible freedom
Yeah.
to shape ourselves.
But it also means there's no one to blame but ourselves.
That's the other side of the coin.
Right. If we mess up,
If we make choices we regret.
we can't just say, well, that's just how I am.
No, because there's no fixed how you are.
Existentialism pushes us to own our choices.
To recognize that we're always in the process of creating ourselves.
Yeah.
Even when we're not actively doing anything.
Even inaction is a choice.
Exactly.
And that leads us to another huge idea: freedom and responsibility.
They're two sides of the same coin.
The article uses the example of a student who doesn't study for an exam and fails.
Classic example.
That's a direct consequence of their choice.
Right.
But existentialism takes it a step further. It's not just about our individual actions. It's like we're responsible for humanity as a whole
In a way, yes.
through the image we project with our choices.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
Right.
Yeah, because if we're truly free, we can't just blame our circumstances or other people for who we become.
Right. We have to own it.
We do.
Of course, our environment, our upbringing, all that plays a role.
Of course.
But ultimately, we're the authors of our own stories.
And according to Sartre,
Yeah.
our choices contribute to a larger vision of what it means to be human.
So it's not just about us.
No, it has ripple effects.
It's about the impact our choices have on the world,
Exactly.
which is pretty empowering,
It is.
but also kind of terrifying.
Right, because it means we bear the full weight of our decisions.
Yeah, no pressure. Right.
No pressure at all.
So then we have this concept of authenticity and inauthenticity,
Mhm.
making choices based on what you truly believe
Yeah.
versus just following the crowd.
Going with the flow.
The article uses these examples of artists.
Right.
One who gives up their passion for a safe, conventional job,
Yeah.
and another who keeps going even though it's hard, even though they're struggling.
Right, because they believe in what they're doing.
That really gets at this internal conflict, this
Yeah.
pull between what society expects of you
Mm-hmm.
and what your own inner voice is telling you.
That's the struggle.
And inauthenticity often comes from wanting to avoid that struggle.
It does.
It's easier to just go along with the program.
Right, to let other people decide for you.
To avoid that anxiety that comes with freedom and responsibility.
Exactly.
But existentialism says that comes at a cost.
It does.
The cost of your true self.
Yeah.
Living authentically means constantly checking in with yourself, questioning your motives, your choices,
Making sure they align with your values,
even when it's uncomfortable.
especially when it's uncomfortable.
And then we come back to this idea of the absurd,
Yeah.
that clash between wanting our life to have meaning and the universe just seeming cold and indifferent.
Silent.
Even that Sisyphus analogy, pushing that boulder up the hill, even though it keeps rolling back down.
It's a powerful image.
It's about finding meaning in the act itself,
Yeah.
not in some external goal.
Because that might never come.
It's about shifting your focus from searching for meaning out there to creating your own meaning within.
That's the key.
And this all sounds pretty heavy.
It can be.
The article mentions anguish and anxiety that come with this freedom,
Right.
that existential dread of knowing you're completely in charge,
Yeah.
with no safety net of some predetermined purpose.
It can feel overwhelming.
That example of the career decision anxiety, that really hit home for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
That fear of making the wrong choice when there's no clear right answer. It's the burden of freedom.
And that anxiety, it's a natural response to knowing that we're just thrown into this world
Yeah.
with no instruction manual.
Right. We're kind of making it up as we go along.
Exactly.
But existentialists don't see anxiety as a bad thing.
Oh,
It can be a motivator.
how so?
It can push us to confront our choices, to make them consciously and deliberately,
So it's not about eliminating anxiety.
Yeah.
It's about using it as fuel.
to live a more authentic life.
And finally, there's the issue of death.
Yeah, the big one.
The article calls it death infinitude.
Right. The fact that our time is limited.
And that can be scary,
It can be.
but it can also be clarifying.
So,
Because when you realize you don't have forever, it makes you focus on what really matters.
it does.
The article uses the example of a terminally ill patient who chooses to embrace life,
Yeah.
to really experience things.
Because they know their time is precious.
Facing our mortality,
Yeah.
it can help us get our priorities straight. It can strip away the distractions.
And make us live more intentionally.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these existentialist ideas have popped up in so many different areas of our culture.
Yeah, they've really permeated our collective consciousness.
The article mentions books like The Stranger, No Exit.
By Sartre.
Yeah, and Crime and Punishment,
Yeah.
and movies like Fight Club.
And The Matrix.
You can see those existential themes playing out all over the place.
They're all grappling with these big questions.
About absurdity, responsibility, the nature of reality.
The search for identity.
The alienated protagonist in The Stranger
Yeah.
going against societal norms.
And facing the consequences.
And Neo in The Matrix.
Having to choose between blissful ignorance
Right.
and the painful truth.
These stories really resonate with people.
They do.
Because they tap into something deep within us.
They speak to our own existential struggles.
And it's not just art, is it?
No, not at all.
The article connects existentialism to all sorts of contemporary concerns.
Yeah, it's surprisingly relevant.
People wanting to find careers that are meaningful to them,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very existential pursuit.
Choosing your own path.
And the growing awareness of mental health.
Right.
Acknowledging existential anxiety as a real thing.
It's not just in your head.
And then there's technology.
Yeah.
Our digital identities.
It raises questions about who we are in this virtual world.
About what gives our lives purpose in this digital age.
It's a whole new layer of existential questions.
So, in a world where traditional sources of meaning are constantly being questioned,
Yeah, where the old answers don't seem to fit anymore.
existentialism gives us a framework
A way to navigate the uncertainty.
to find our own individual purpose.
Exactly.
And that focus on personal responsibility and authentic choice. It's
Yeah.
more important now than ever.
Because we're bombarded with so many choices,
So many options.
so many pressures.
So much information.
It's overwhelming
And we have to decide what truly matters to us.
what we stand for.
So let's recap this deep dive into existentialism. It's shown us a philosophy that's all about our freedom,
Yeah.
the responsibility that comes with it,
The burden and the gift.
the understanding that we create our own meaning,
In the universe that doesn't necessarily provide it.
and the importance of striving for an authentic life.
Even in the face of absurdity.
It's not about easy answers.
No,
They're comforting illusions.
It's about facing the hard truths.
It's a challenge,
It is.
but it's also empowering
It is.
because it puts us in the driver's seat.
Of our own lives.
So as you're listening to this,
Yeah.
think about how these ideas resonate with you.
Mhm.
Where do you feel the weight of your freedom?
Where do you feel that pressure to choose?
Where are you searching for authenticity?
Where are you trying to live in alignment with your true self?
Existentialism isn't a set of rules.
It's not a dogma.
It's an invitation
To engage with life on a deeper level.
to ask the big questions.
And to create your own
To
answers.
live deliberately.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Mhm.
In a world full of distraction,
Full of noise.
full of prepackaged answers,
Yeah.
what does it mean for you in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts
Right?
to create your own unique sense of meaning and purpose?
What does that look like for you?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. All right, so you ever feel like you want to get to the heart of some really big ideas,
Yeah,
but, without getting kind of lost in all the details?
absolutely.
That's exactly what we're going to do in this deep dive today.
Right.
We've got 10 of philosophy's most famous quotes all lined up. And we're using each one to kind of springboard into centuries of thought.
It's true.
So think of this deep dive as like your cheat sheet to understand
Yeah.
some really, really fundamental concepts.
Yeah, we've taken these really potent snippets of wisdom
Yeah.
and we've distilled the core explanations
Yeah.
in crucial context so you can quickly grasp what makes them so enduring.
Absolutely.
Our goal isn't just to tell you what they mean,
Yeah.
but to really help you see how these ideas
Exactly.
can actually resonate in your life.
Exactly.
And offer value in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and philosophy isn't some abstract exercise.
Yeah.
Like these quotes, even the old ones,
Yeah.
still pack a punch.
Yeah.
They can give you some seriously useful frameworks
Yeah.
for understanding yourself,
Right.
the choices you make, and the world around you.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump straight in with a classic.
Okay.
The unexamined life is not worth living.
All right.
That is from Socrates.
Right.
Okay, so
Big one.
let's unpack that. What's the heart of this?
Yeah.
What is the real takeaway here?
At its core, Socrates is urging us toward constant self-reflection. He believed that a truly meaningful life isn't lived on autopilot.
Right.
It requires us to continually question
Yeah.
our beliefs, our actions, our motivations.
Yeah. Sure.
It's about actively evaluating who we are
Right.
and why we operate the way we do,
Right.
rather than just kind of coasting along.
Right. It's like the difference between just like showing up for work every day
Yeah,
and actually asking yourself,
right.
does this work align with
Yeah.
what truly matters to me?
Yeah.
What am I trying to build in my life?
Mhm.
So consider an area of your own life where you might be operating on autopilot.
Right.
What's one question you could ask yourself about it today?
That's a great way to frame it. And the source material talks about somebody who achieves societal markers of success,
Right.
but still feels empty
Oh, yeah.
because they haven't actually dug into their own genuine desires.
Right.
And that self-examination can be the key
Yeah.
to unlocking a more purposeful path.
Yeah. So it's not about suddenly having all the answers.
Right.
It's more about building that muscle of inquiry.
Yes.
Why do I hold this belief?
Absolutely.
What's driving this decision?
Yeah.
It's that ongoing internal dialogue that Socrates championed, right?
Precisely. It's about cultivating critical thinking
Yeah.
and a deep self-awareness. By regularly questioning our choices and assumptions,
Yeah.
we become active participants in shaping our lives,
Right.
making decisions that are more aligned with our authentic selves.
Okay. Shifting gears slightly.
Okay.
Aristotle comes along with happiness depends upon ourselves.
Right.
This one feels particularly relevant today, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In a world that's like so saturated
Yeah.
with messages about external fixes for happiness.
Well, what's fascinating here is Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia.
Okay.
Now, while often translated as happiness,
Yeah.
it's more accurately understood as a deep sense of flourishing and living well,
Right.
aligned with your virtues.
Mhm.
He saw this as the ultimate human goal, not just fleeting pleasure.
Okay.
True happiness for Aristotle stems from cultivating wisdom,
Right.
practicing virtue, and achieving self-mastery,
Oh,
all internal quality.
the source gives a really relatable example.
Yeah,
Someone loses their job.
right.
One person like totally collapses.
Yeah,
The other person sees it as an opportunity.
yeah,
Same external event.
right,
Wildly different internal responses.
right.
And those responses are shaping their well-being.
Exactly. External circumstances will always exist.
Yeah.
But Aristotle highlights the power
Right.
of our internal landscape.
Yeah. Our mindset, our resilience, how we choose to respond.
Right.
That's what truly dictates our level of fulfillment.
Yeah, think about a recent challenge you faced.
Yeah.
How did your internal response shape your experience of it?
That's a great question.
So for you, as someone who values knowledge
Right.
that actually improves your life,
Yeah.
this quote really shines a light
Very
on the
good.
power you hold within your own perspective and your internal resources
Yeah.
to cultivate a lasting sense of well-being.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
moves us away from passively waiting
Yeah.
for happiness to arrive from the outside.
Right.
And empowers us to actively nurture the internal qualities
Right.
that lead to a rich and meaningful life.
Okay, next up we have René Descartes
Okay.
with the bedrock statement. I think, therefore I am.
All right.
This one always feels like such a fundamental point.
It is.
What's the core insight we
Yeah.
should take away from this?
Descartes was on a mission to find absolute certainty.
He realized that even if he doubted everything imaginable,
Yeah.
the very act of doubting
Right.
proved he was thinking. And
Yeah.
if he was thinking, then he must exist.
Right.
So this establishes our capacity for thought, self-awareness itself,
Yeah.
as undeniable proof
Right.
of our individual existence.
So even if we question the reality around us,
Yeah,
the fact that we're having that very thought
right.
confirms something essential about our being.
Precisely. The source uses a great illustration.
Yeah.
Even when we question our reality,
Yeah.
the act of questioning itself
Right.
confirms our existence as thinking beings.
Right.
It's the ultimate foundation of self-awareness.
And the implication for you, our listener,
Yeah.
is the profound importance of rational thought.
It is.
It's a testament to the power of your mind,
Yeah.
your ability to analyze,
Yeah.
to question, to understand.
Yes, it underscores the significance of
Yeah.
our cognitive abilities in grounding our sense of self and our understanding of reality. It's an appeal to your inherent intellectual curiosity and a
Right.
strength of reason.
Okay, now a shift in focus with Victor Hugo.
Oh, okay.
He who opens a school door closes a prison.
Right.
This quote feels incredibly relevant
Yeah,
to the progress of any society.
absolutely.
So unpack this for us.
Well, what's powerful here is Hugo's metaphor.
Sure.
He's not just talking about acquiring specific skills in a classroom.
Right.
He's highlighting the transformative power of education
Right.
in empowering individuals
Yeah.
and consequently benefiting society as a whole.
Right.
Education broadens perspectives.
Yeah.
It reduces ignorance,
Yeah.
which can often be a root cause of societal problems.
Right. And the source mentions that investments in education correlate with lower crime rates
Right.
and stronger economic growth.
Yeah.
It's like this idea that an informed populace
Yes.
is a more empowered and positive force.
Exactly. Education provides opportunity. It fosters critical thinking and equips individuals to contribute
Yeah.
more meaningfully by prioritizing learning.
Yeah.
We're essentially investing in a more just
Right.
and prosperous future,
Yeah.
thereby lessening the need for, metaphorically speaking, prisons. This connects directly to your value of knowledge.
Right.
Think about how access to information has shaped your own opportunities.
So for you who deeply values knowledge, this quote reinforces the far-reaching impact of education, extending way beyond individual gain to the very fabric of society.
Absolutely. It links your personal pursuit of learning to a much larger societal benefit, illustrating the profound transformative potential of education for everyone.
Okay, brace yourself for a quote that often sparks debate. Friedrich Nietzsche's God is Dead.
Big one.
This is so frequently misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
What's the crucial philosophical meaning I need to grasp here?
Nietzsche wasn't making a literal announcement about a deity's demise. Instead, he was offering a profound observation about the declining influence of traditional religious and moral frameworks in modern society. He argued that the Enlightenment and the rise of scientific thought had eroded the unquestioned foundations of these long-held belief systems.
So it's less about a theological statement and more about, like, the fading authority in these established systems of morality and meaning in people's lives.
Precisely. And Nietzsche saw this as both a potential crisis and a significant opportunity. The crisis was the risk of nihilism. The feeling that life is without inherent meaning or purpose. But the opportunity was for humanity to move beyond these external authorities and actively create its own values to define its own meaning in a world no longer dictated by a divinely ordained moral code. Nietzsche challenges you to actively define your values. What's one value you hold that isn't simply inherited, but consciously chosen?
The source points out that people now often turn to philosophy, ethical frameworks, and their own personal beliefs for moral guidance.
Absolutely.
Filling the space left by a lessening reliance on religious authority.
It's about taking responsibility for constructing our own moral compass, rather than relying on pre-established doctrines.
So for you, this prompts a deep reflection.
It does.
What truly underpins your sense of right and wrong in this post-God world? As Nietzsche framed it.
That's a great question.
That's a really potent point. Now let's move towards a more action-oriented idea. With Mahatma Gandhi's powerful statement. You must be the change you wish to see in the world.
I love that one.
This feels incredibly direct and empowering.
It is.
So unpack this for us.
Gandhi's message centers on the transformative power of personal example. He believed that the most effective way to bring about change isn't solely through grand pronouncements or political movements, but by personally embodying the very qualities we hope to see in others and in the world around us.
The example of practicing kindness, if you desire a more compassionate world, really resonates with me.
It's a good one.
It's not enough to just talk about it.
No.
You have to actively live it. So think about a small change you'd like to see in your immediate environment. What's one action you could take today to contribute to that change?
Exactly. It's about accepting personal responsibility for contributing to the kind of world we envision. Instead of waiting for others to initiate change, we must lead by our own actions.
And for you, this might spark a consideration of how your daily behaviors, no matter how seemingly insignificant, can contribute to the larger shifts you desire.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing our own agency. And understanding that even small, consistent actions can create a significant ripple effect.
Precisely. It's an empowering message about the potential within each individual to be a catalyst for positive transformation.
Next we have Plato. With the seemingly playful suggestion. Life must be lived as play.
I like this one. But
I suspect there's a more profound meaning here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Than just advocating for constant amusement.
You're right. Plato wasn't suggesting a life devoid of responsibility. Instead, he was advocating for approaching life with a sense of curiosity, creativity, and enjoyment, much like a child engages in play. It's about avoiding excessive rigidity and seriousness and embracing a more flexible and open-minded perspective.
The source gives the example of approaching work with enthusiasm and a sense of fun, often leading to greater productivity and a feeling of fulfillment. It's about injecting that element of playfulness even into our more serious endeavors. So can you think of a task you've been dreading? And how could you approach it with a more playful mindset?
Exactly. It's about finding joy in the process,
Right.
fostering innovation, and maintaining a sense of wonder.
Right.
Yeah.
And for you, this might be a reminder
Yeah.
to assess the balance between your obligations
Right.
and your capacity for spontaneous engagement and enjoyment in your life.
It is a good reminder.
It's about preventing life from becoming
Yeah.
so rigid and burdensome
Right.
that we lose that essential spark of curiosity
Yeah.
and the ability to find pleasure in the everyday.
Yes, it's about cultivating a mindset
Yeah.
that welcomes exploration and lightheartedness
Right.
alongside our more demanding pursuits.
Okay, now we turn to Jean-Paul Sartre,
Okay.
a central figure in existentialism,
Right.
with the rather stark declaration, man is condemned to be free.
Okay.
What does this seemingly contradictory statement actually signify?
Sartre's existentialism places immense emphasis
Okay.
on radical freedom. He believed that humans are born without a predefined purpose or nature.
Okay.
We are absolutely free to define ourselves
Right.
through the choices we make.
Right.
However, this total freedom comes with a significant weight,
Right.
total responsibility for those choices.
Right.
We can't attribute our actions solely to a predetermined fate
Yeah.
or external forces.
So the condemned aspect arises from
Yes.
the inescapable burden of having to make these choices
Yeah.
and fully owning their consequences.
Precisely, the source illustrates this by pointing out that we can't entirely blame societal structures for our actions because we always possess the freedom to choose differently, even within those constraints.
So for you, this underscores the critical importance of personal accountability.
It does.
And conscious decision-making. It's a powerful call to own your choices and their outcomes.
Yeah.
Think about a recent decision you made. Did you fully embrace your freedom
Yeah.
and the responsibility that came with it?
That's a good question.
It's a potent reminder that we are the authors of our own narratives,
We are.
even if that authorship can sometimes feel overwhelming.
Exactly. It highlights the significance of deliberate action and the understanding that our choices actively shape who we become and the world around us.
Okay, we're nearing the final stretch.
All right.
With another incredibly influential Socratic quote.
Okay.
The only thing I know is that I know nothing.
Right.
This might sound like a paradox.
It does.
But it's clearly a cornerstone of his philosophical approach.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What's the core insight here?
This statement embodies a profound intellectual humility. Socrates believed that true wisdom begins with acknowledging the vastness of our own ignorance by recognizing what we don't know.
Yeah.
We open ourselves up to genuine learning and the continuous pursuit of knowledge.
Right.
It's about constantly questioning and resisting the urge to believe we possess all the answers.
The source uses the example of a scientist who constantly questions existing theories and seeks new understanding. It's that perpetual state of inquiry.
Yes.
So how does embracing the idea of knowing nothing impact your own approach to learning?
Yes. It's about embracing a lifelong journey of learning and maintaining a perpetually open mind.
Right. And for you, with your strong interest in acquiring knowledge, this quote reinforces the idea that learning is an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
And that intellectual humility is essential for true understanding.
Yes.
It's a reminder that, the more we learn, the more we often realize the extent of what we don't yet know.
It's true.
It's a beautiful paradox that fuels ongoing curiosity.
Exactly. It's an invitation to remain perpetually curious.
Right.
And to approach new information with both humility and a genuine eagerness to learn.
Okay, finally we arrive at another deeply thought-provoking quote
Right.
from Jean-Paul Sartre.
Okay.
Hell is other people.
Right.
This one, often taken out of context, paints a rather stark picture of human interaction.
It does.
So unpack this for us.
This quote originates from Sartre's play No Exit.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily a blanket condemnation of all human relationships. Rather, it refers to the psychological anguish that can arise in relationships characterized by judgment, inauthenticity, and the relentless need for external validation. It's about how the perceptions and expectations of others can become a form of psychological entrapment.
The source describes someone who constantly seeks approval from others and feels confined by their opinions and expectations. It's that sense of being defined by external viewpoints rather than by your own true self.
Exactly.
Can you think of a time you felt constrained by someone else's expectations of you?
Yes, it's about the potential for interpersonal dynamics to become a kind of psychological prison.
Right.
When we are overly concerned with how others perceive us and lose touch with our own authenticity.
So for you, this encourages a deeper self-awareness within your relationships.
Absolutely.
And a focus on your own internal values.
Yeah.
Rather than being solely driven by external judgment.
It's a good point.
It's a call for us to strive for genuine self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And to seek out relationships grounded in authentic connection.
Right.
Rather than constant evaluation and judgment.
Precisely. It's a nuanced observation
Yeah.
about the complexities inherent in human interaction.
Right.
And the importance of maintaining a strong sense of self within those interactions.
Wow. That was a rapid but hopefully insightful journey through some truly foundational philosophical ideas.
Absolutely.
We touched on everything from the vital importance of self-reflection to the weighty responsibility of our freedom, the intricate nature of human connection.
It's true. And as we've explored,
Yeah.
these aren't just dusty abstract concepts.
Yeah.
These quotes offer remarkably practical lenses through which you can examine your own life, your choices, and your fundamental perspectives.
Yeah.
They really do touch upon the core
Yeah.
of personal well-being and societal values.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, who's always seeking knowledge that you can actually use, we truly hope this deep dive into these philosophical gems has given you some valuable food for thought, and perhaps a few genuine aha moments.
Yeah, hope so.
And these insights, despite their age in some cases,
It's true.
remain incredibly relevant for navigating the complexities of modern life and making more conscious and meaningful choices.
Absolutely.
So as you navigate your day, take a moment to consider this.
Okay.
Reflecting on these 10 quotes, which single one resonates most powerfully with you in this moment. And more importantly, why? How might that specific insight subtly shift your thinking or influence your actions moving forward? It's just a little nudge to keep that intellectual exploration alive. Thanks so much for diving deep with us.
That's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Have you ever just stopped and asked yourself, what's my life purpose? I mean, we all do, right? Like, it's this big question that pops into your head every so often. It can feel kind of daunting, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And it's something so many of us grapple with.
Exactly. And you know, you sent in some really fascinating material that dives deep into this whole idea of purpose. So for this deep dive, we really want to break it all down for you, make it practical, make it understandable. We're going to cover what life purpose actually means, why it matters so much, you know, all those common myths that trip us up, and most importantly, how you can actually start to figure out your own purpose.
And what I really appreciate about the material you've gathered is that it takes this huge concept of life purpose and makes it feel actionable. Like it provides a roadmap, something you can really work with.
Exactly. We're going to hit 8 key areas from the material you sent in, from really defining what life purpose is, all the way to, believe it or not, how to talk about it with others.
It's a journey, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
So first things first. What is life purpose? It's got to be more than just, you know, your job title or what you do for a living.
It's definitely deeper than that.
So much deeper. The material you sent defines it as this deep sense of meaning and direction. It's like the why behind everything you do.
It's like, why do you get out of bed in the morning? What kind of mark do you want to leave on the world?
Exactly. It's about that legacy you want to leave behind. And it's personal, right? It's unique to each of us. And what I found really interesting is that it's not static. The material emphasizes how life purpose can evolve over time.
And that evolution is so important to keep in mind. It's not about finding this one perfect answer and sticking with it forever.
Yeah.
Because we change and our purpose can change with us.
That makes a lot of sense. So, like, when we're thinking about purpose, there are all these different perspectives. Your material touched on the philosophical side of things, bringing in some pretty heavy hitters. Aristotle, for example, with his idea of eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia. It's basically about living a life of flourishing, reaching your full potential through virtuous actions.
Right. And then there's Viktor Frankl, who, even in the face of unimaginable suffering in concentration camps, found that meaning was essential for survival. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It really highlights the human need for purpose, even in the darkest of times.
And then from the psychology side, we've got folks like Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow. They linked purpose to this idea of self-actualization, becoming the best, truest version of yourself.
Yeah, like that journey of fulfilling your potential.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget the spiritual dimension. For some people, purpose is all about serving a higher power or contributing to humanity as a whole. It's interesting to think about how all these different threads could weave together to create your own unique sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And one thing the material does really well is untangling these often confused concepts: purpose, goals, and passion.
Oh yeah, those can get all mixed up.
They really can. Purpose is like that big overarching why, that big picture reason for your existence. The material gives an example: to inspire others through creativity. That's your guiding star. Goals are the concrete steps you take to get there, like write a book. And passion. Well, passion is what fuels you. It's the excitement and the energy behind what you're doing. Maybe you just love storytelling. So you've got this guiding star of purpose. You're driven by your passion for storytelling. And you set the goal of writing a book to make it happen.
I love that analogy, the guiding star, the fuel, and the milestones along the way. That's a great way to visualize it. Okay, so let's say someone's listening and they're like, okay, this all sounds interesting, but I don't have this big, clear purpose figured out. So what? What's the big deal?
Well, the material you provided makes a compelling case for why discovering your purpose is so important.
It does. It talks about how lacking purpose can lead to some serious downsides. Feelings of emptiness, maybe anxiety, just an overall lack of satisfaction with life.
Right. And then it flips it around and highlights all the good things that can come from having a strong sense of purpose.
More happiness, better health, even increased resilience in the face of challenges.
It even mentions some fascinating research from positive psychology that suggests a link between a sense of purpose and things like lower stress levels and better cognitive function as we age. Like, it's not just about feeling good, it can have a real impact on your well-being.
That's wild. It really underscores how important purpose can be. And I love that the material uses this image of purpose as an internal compass, because it really does feel that way, doesn't it? Like when you're facing a tough decision, your sense of purpose can guide you.
Absolutely. It can help you navigate all those twists and turns that life throws your way. Now, there's something else we need to address. We often hear these common ideas about life purpose that can actually make it harder to find.
Oh yeah, those myths, like those misconceptions that can really throw you off track.
Exactly. The material you shared breaks down 5 big myths that we often encounter. And I think debunking these myths is essential for anyone on the journey of discovering their purpose.
Okay, hit me with myth number 1.
Myth number 1. You only have one true purpose.
Oh, I've definitely heard that one. It's like you're supposed to find this one perfect thing, and that's it for your whole life.
Right. And the material points out how limiting that belief can be. Because as we were talking about earlier, people change, our interests change, our priorities change. So it makes sense that our purpose might evolve too. What brought you meaning 10 years ago might not be the same thing that brings you meaning today, and that's okay.
That's such a good point. It takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It really does. It gives you permission to explore and grow without feeling like you're failing if your purpose shifts over time.
So what's myth number 2?
This is another big one. Your purpose has to be something huge, like you have to cure cancer or solve world hunger to have a real purpose.
Oh, I think that myth stops so many people in their tracks. It makes purpose feel unattainable, like it's only for these extraordinary individuals.
Exactly. And the material really emphasizes that this isn't true at all. It reminds us that purpose can be found in everyday acts of kindness, in the way we show up for our loved ones, in the small contributions we make to our communities. Your purpose doesn't have to be on a grand global scale to be meaningful and fulfilling.
That's a huge relief. It means we all have the potential to find and live our purpose, regardless of our job titles or social status.
Exactly. Okay, myth number 3. Your purpose must be tied to your work or your career.
Oh, that's a tricky one. Especially in today's world, there's so much emphasis on finding a career that's also your passion.
Right. But the material highlights how purpose can also be found outside of our careers. It reminds us to consider our hobbies, the causes we care about, the ways we choose to spend our time and energy outside of work. These can all be sources of deep meaning and purpose.
That's important to remember because sometimes we put so much pressure on our jobs to be everything,
It's about finding a balance, finding purpose in different areas of your life, not just expecting your career to fulfill every need.
Yeah.
All right, myth number 4. Finding your purpose will be this sudden eureka moment.
Like that light bulb suddenly goes off over your head and you just know.
Right. But the material points out that discovering your purpose is more often a gradual process. It's about self-reflection, experimentation, and paying attention to the clues along the way. It's about those small aha moments that add up over time, not necessarily a single blinding flash of insight.
Okay, I'm starting to see a theme here, taking the pressure off, being patient with ourselves, trusting the process.
Exactly. Okay, last one, myth number 5. If you're not already wildly passionate about something, then you're basically doomed and you have no purpose.
I think a lot of people get stuck on this one.
Yeah, we're often told to follow your passion, but what if you're not sure what your passion even is?
Exactly.
What the material points out here is really interesting. It suggests that passion can actually develop through commitment and engagement.
So it's not always about finding that pre-existing passion and then building your purpose around it?
Right. Sometimes it's about choosing something that resonates with you on some level, even if you're not head over heels in love with it at first, and then committing to it, giving it your time and energy. And as you engage with it more deeply, that initial spark can grow into a full-fledged passion.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing. It's almost like purpose can lead to passion, not just the other way around.
Exactly. It's about giving yourself permission to explore different possibilities, even if they don't initially feel like a perfect fit. Okay, so we've busted those 5 big myths. Now let's get to the practical part. How do we actually go about identifying our life purpose?
Yeah, because it can feel pretty overwhelming, right?
It can be, but the material you shared outlines some pretty concrete steps for this process of self-discovery, and I think having a framework like this can really help to make it feel more manageable.
Okay, I'm ready. What's step 1?
Step 1 is all about reflecting on your core values.
Values, like what's most important to you?
Exactly. Like, what are those fundamental beliefs that shape your worldview and guide your actions? The material poses a powerful question to help you uncover these values. What would you stand for, even if no one else agreed or even knew about it?
That's deep. It's like getting to the heart of what really matters to you without any outside influence.
Right. Because when you're clear about your values, it becomes easier to make choices that are aligned with who you are at your core. And those choices can then lead you towards your purpose.
Makes sense. What's step 2?
Step 2 is to pay attention to what truly energizes you.
What gets you excited? What makes you feel alive?
Exactly. The materials suggest asking yourself questions like, what activities make you lose track of time? When do you feel most engaged and enthusiastic?
Those moments where you're so absorbed in something that you completely forget about everything else.
Those are the clues. Those are the moments that might be pointing you towards your purpose.
Love it. Okay, what's next?
Step 3 is all about recognizing your strengths. What are you naturally good at? And I think even more importantly, how could you use those talents to benefit others?
That's a key piece, isn't it? That idea of using your strengths in service of something bigger than yourself.
It is. Purpose often involves a sense of contribution. It's about considering how your unique skills and talents can address a need in the world or make a positive impact on the lives of others.
That's inspiring. Okay, step 4.
Step 4 is taking a look at what the world around you actually needs. What are those problems or issues that you feel drawn to solve? Are there any injustices or challenges that you feel passionate about addressing?
It's like looking beyond your own personal needs and considering the bigger picture.
Right. And that emotional connection to a particular issue or cause can be a powerful indicator of your purpose.
Makes sense. What are the next steps?
The next few steps are more action-oriented. It's about getting out there and experimenting with new activities, exploring different interests, even if they seem a little outside your comfort zone. And then paying attention to any recurring patterns or themes that emerge in your life.
Like maybe you find yourself constantly reading about a certain topic or giving advice to friends on a particular issue.
Exactly. Those patterns can offer valuable insights into your natural inclinations and areas where your purpose might lie. And then finally, the material suggests actually crafting a purpose statement.
Oh, that's a good idea, like a concise way to articulate what your purpose is.
Right. Something like, my purpose is to empower others through education and storytelling, for example.
Having a purpose statement like that feels like it would really help to solidify your thinking and give you a clear direction to move in. Okay, so let's say you've gone through these steps, you have a better understanding of your purpose. But let's be real, it's not always easy to stay on track.
Oh, absolutely. There are always obstacles. The material acknowledges that, and it actually addresses some of the common challenges that people might face along the way.
Okay, like what?
Well, one big one is fear of failure. That feeling of, what if I get it wrong? Or what if I choose the wrong path?
Oh, that's so relatable. I think everyone feels that fear at some point.
Definitely. The key is to remember that it's all part of the process.
So it's not about avoiding failure altogether, but rather reframing it as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. Every experience, even the ones that don't turn out the way you expected, can teach you something valuable about yourself and guide you closer to your purpose.
Makes sense. What are some other obstacles?
Another big one is societal pressure.
Oh yeah, feeling like you need to follow a certain path because it's what's expected of you.
Right. Maybe your family has certain expectations, or there's a lot of pressure to choose a particular career path because it's seen as successful or prestigious.
And that could be tough to navigate because you don't want to disappoint people.
I know. But the material reminds us that your purpose is personal. It has to be true to you, not to someone else's expectations. It's about finding what brings meaning and fulfillment to your life, regardless of external pressures.
Okay, I needed to hear that. What else?
We also have to talk about self-doubt. That inner critic that tells you you're not good enough or that your purpose isn't worthwhile.
Oh, that inner critic can be brutal.
It can be. But instead of listening to that voice of self-doubt, the material encourages us to focus on making progress, on taking small steps forward.
So celebrating those small wins and not getting too caught up in perfectionism.
Exactly. And then the last obstacle that's mentioned is feeling overwhelmed by all the possibilities.
Especially if you have a lot of interests and passions, it can be tough to know where to focus your energy.
Right. And the material suggests a helpful way to narrow things down.
How's that?
By considering two main factors: the potential impact you could make and the joy or fulfillment the activity brings you.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where you can make a meaningful contribution and also genuinely enjoy what you're doing.
Precisely. Okay, so let's say you've done the work, you have a good grasp of your purpose, and you're ready to really live it. How do you integrate that purpose into your everyday life?
Because it's one thing to have this abstract idea of your purpose, but it's another thing to actually put it into action.
Absolutely. And the material offers some really practical guidance on this. It talks about setting goals that are aligned with your purpose.
So instead of just setting random goals, you're making sure that they're moving you closer to what truly matters to you.
Exactly. And it also talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people who understand and encourage your purpose.
That makes a lot of sense. Having a strong support system can make all the difference when you're facing challenges or feeling discouraged.
Absolutely. And it's also encouraging to know that there might already be signs that you're living in alignment with your purpose.
Oh, like what?
The material mentions things like feeling a natural sense of motivation, finding meaning even in difficult challenges, and maybe even inspiring others without consciously trying. These can be indicators that you're on the right track, that your actions are reflecting your deeper purpose.
It's a good reminder to pay attention to those subtle signs, to trust our intuition when it comes to our purpose.
Right. And, the material you shared includes some really inspiring examples of individuals who found and lived their purpose.
Oh, yeah. The stories of people like Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, and Marie Curie.
Exactly. These are all individuals who faced tremendous obstacles, but ultimately made a profound impact on the world, because they were driven by a clear sense of purpose.
And what's striking about their stories is that they didn't have it all figured out from the beginning. Their paths were full of twists and turns, but they kept going.
Right. Their journeys highlight the importance of resilience and determination in the pursuit of purpose.
It's inspiring, but also a little daunting. Like, how do you even begin to talk about your purpose with others? It can feel kind of vulnerable,
I get that. And the material actually addresses this. It offers some practical advice on how to share your purpose with others.
Oh, that's helpful. So what does it say?
It suggests keeping it concise and focused, trying to connect with the other person on an emotional level, and inviting their curiosity.
That sounds a lot less intimidating than I imagined.
Right. And it gives a great example of how to start the conversation. You could say something like, "I'm passionate about helping people heal through art." And then you can follow that up with a question like, "What's something that you're deeply passionate about?"
I love that. It's a genuine way to connect with someone and share something meaningful without making it this big, formal announcement.
Exactly. It's about sharing your passion and inviting others to share theirs. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the key takeaway is that finding your life purpose isn't about discovering some perfect preordained path. It's more about understanding your unique gifts, your values, and what truly matters to you, and then making conscious choices that align with that understanding.
It's a process, not a destination.
Exactly. It's about staying curious, being open to new experiences, and trusting that your purpose will unfold in its own time.
I love that. So to all of you listening, I want to leave you with the same two questions that the material ends with. What is your life purpose? And maybe even more importantly, what is one small step you can take toward it starting today? Keep those questions in mind as you continue on your own journey of purpose.